Daddy, help me. Steve, where are you?
Hello, and welcome to episode 35 of Voices in the Static, a Silent Hill fan podcast. My name is Whitney, and I'm a longtime fan of Konami's survival horror series and the owner of the fan site SilentHillHistoricalSociety.com. In today's episode, I'm continuing a retrospective on the Silent Hill series with several of my friends and fellow Silent Hill fans, with an in-depth discussion on Silent Hill Shattered Memories. Say hello, everyone.
Well, I'm AJ. I'm known online as the Gaming Muse, and I run a YouTube channel with predominantly Silent Hill material.
Hi, I'm October, the artist formerly known as Rourke, and I'm a artist and senior editor at RelyOnHorror.com.
And I am William. I'm also a senior editor on RelyOnHorror.com and the creator of the YouTube channel Screaming Wave Productions.
I'm Kyle. I'm a freelancer in games, and my very first podcast ever was this one, so I owe a lot to Whitney.
Aw, thank you. Before we jump into discussion, here's a summary of the game in case anyone listening needs a refresher. Spoilers, obviously. Players take the role of Harry Mason, who gets into a car accident late one night on the icy streets of Silent Hill. Upon waking from the crash, he notices that his young daughter Cheryl is missing from the passenger seat.
Oh my God.
And goes into town to find her.
Cheryl! Cheryl!
Due to an extreme blizzard, most of the town has been shut down, so Harry is pretty much on his own, though he does meet a few familiar faces through the game, including a local cop named Sybil Bennett.
You okay, sir? Not a good night to be out and about.
I'm looking for my daughter.
Sybil is somewhat suspicious of Harry, given his outbursts, rash actions, and convenient bouts of amnesia whenever she tries to get more personal information from him or about his daughter.
Mr. Mason,
Officer Bennett? What's going on?
I'm looking for you. Where the hell did you run off to?
I'm in some woods.
You just ran from a police officer.
What? Come on.
Look, Mr. Mason.
I need to find my daughter. Christ. I'm not under arrest, am I?
Mr. Mason! Get yourself back here now. Do not make things difficult for yourself.
I'm heading back to town.
Due to the nature of the storm, the pair are separated shortly after meeting, and being impatient to find his daughter, Harry's never willing to wait in one spot long enough for Sybil to meet back up with him.
Cheryl could have been taken there.
Yes, Cheryl could be there. Will you do this for me?
Yeah, I'm going. But if Cheryl's not there, I can't wait. I'm sorry, I just can't.
Harry.
During the search for Cheryl, there are short interludes of an unseen patient receiving therapy by Dr. Michael Kaufman.
I'm glad you came. Just turning up shows your commitment to the process. Good. I've read your notes. The other therapist didn't work out for you.
We assume it's actually Harry sometime after the crash and telling the doctor the events of the game. These sections of the game are strictly in first-person view, and players must answer yes or no questions and complete a variety of personality tests for the doctor.
Take a look at this short form. I promise it's the only one you'll see during your therapy. try to answer truthfully. It's easier that way.
The way the characters look, act, and even the environments will vary throughout the game based on player responses. The search for Cheryl takes Harry all over Silent Hill, and as he continues to look for his daughter, he begins to second-guess himself as reality isn't matching up with his own memories.
You say she ran off?
No, we were in a car accident. That can't be my daughter.
How many Cheryl Masons could there be in a small town like this? She even looks like you.
There is a resemblance, but my Cheryl's just a kid.
You don't sound so sure. Come on.
Why are there strangers living in his house who claim they've been living there for years? If Cheryl's a child, why is her information in Minwood Chai's records? Who's this Dahlia woman, and why does she know about Cheryl, and why does she act like they're lovers?
Are you on something? I'm Dahlia. Hottest piece of ass you'll ever see in this town. You are Harry Mason. Generally, a fun guy to be with.
To make matters worse, whenever Harry's about to receive key information, their world will suddenly freeze over, and he's doggedly pursued by weird-looking creatures who seem to desperately want some hugs.
We need to talk. When I was at the station, I pulled the file on Harry Mason.
Eventually, Harry crosses Toluca Lake to the lighthouse, which turns out to be a family counseling clinic. He heads inside and opens the door to a therapy session in progress, and become face to face with Dr. Kaufman's unseen patient, a 25-year-old Cheryl who hasn't been able to move on since her father died in a car accident 18 years previously. The Harry we've been controlling is nothing more than a delusion of Cheryl's that her father is still out there looking for her.
A young girl. Her parents don't get along. She blames herself, as all children do. Then Daddy dies. What's a girl to do? Deny that Daddy died. Deny who Daddy was. What 7-year-old actually knows who their parents are anyway? So she obsesses and obsesses over this fantasy dad propping up her make-believe with scraps of a happy life that never was, scraps of a father who never existed. Wake up! Your dad wasn't a hero. Wasn't your knight in shining armor. He was a human being. You never knew him, and you never will. The dad walking around in your head isn't even a ghost. He never existed. A Frankenstein's monster, a child's fantasy. But you're alive. Your mother is alive. She's not the monster you make her out to be. You need to live your life. Cheryl.
She never really knew her father before his death after her parents' divorce, so she clings to happy memories and has created a fantasy father figure. And we've been controlling this delusion the entire game. The ice and the monsters were only a desperate attempt by Cheryl to hang on whenever reality began to threaten her illusion.
Yes?
Cheryl?
No, Dahlia. You want me to find her? Who's calling?
It's her father, Harry Mason. Is she okay?
Harry?
Is she okay?
Who the hell do you think you are?
Sorry? What's the...
Leave me alone!
Depending on how you've played the game, Cheryl can either finally accept her father's death.
You've been with me for so long.
I always will be.
Lash out at Harry for dying.
Why did you have to die? It wasn't my fault. Someone has to take the blame.
Forget me.
Or continue on with her delusions.
You are a hero. The man who died, that wasn't my father. That isn't who I remember. Those memories are all I have. You're all I have.
I'm not even a ghost.
We can also see the type of man Harry really was via a home movie clip, which also varies depending on the player's profile. Harry could be a normal guy, a drunk, a sleaze, or a man physically and emotionally abused by his wife.
Come on, fight back!
Like the other games before it, this does have a UFO ending, which is pretty funny, and involves Cheryl in a therapy session saying the whole town is a spaceship. There's mentions of cults and demons, and James shows up early for his couple therapy appointment.
James?
Wrong day again?
See you tomorrow, James. One of my couples therapy patients. Haven't seen his wife in a while. Where were we?
My mother was a bitch.
Go on. I'm listening.
And that's it. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you're bang on.
Yeah, I think you're bang on. Did you mention, because you know, like a sleaze, a drunk, Did you also mention that one of the potential endings is just sometimes things just don't work out?
Sweetie, don't film this. You know this has nothing to do with you, right? Even though Mom and Dad don't love each other anymore, we both love you. And we always will. Come on.
That's the normal guy.
That's the normal one? Okay, I didn't hear that.
Yeah. That's the normal one where he's just an okay dude. So, before we move on to general discussion, let's quickly go through the game's development and whatnot. It's not quite as insane as Origins or Homecoming, but it's still interesting to say the least. A lot of my summary here came from a post-mortem interview with Sam Barlow, the game's writer and designer, that he did with Edge magazine back in 2014, and some of it was pretty surprising, at least for me. So, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, the 7th installment in Konami's survival horror series, released on the Wii in North America in December 2009, and was later ported to the PlayStation 2 and PlayStation Portable in January 2010. The game later released on all 3 systems in Europe in February and Japan in March of 2010 as well. The game was developed by Climax Studios, who previously developed Silent Hill Origins. And like previous Western entries in the series, it too went through several different incarnations before its eventual release, though these versions never got past the planning stages. Sam Barlow, the designer and writer of Shattered Memories, recalled that, quote, the project that ended up on the shelves would have never been signed off by anyone up front. It wasn't like right back at the start. We just pitched what became the game and everyone came on board. It was very much just kind of meandered. So, how did it all begin? Well, shortly after the release of Silent Hill Origins in 2007, Konami was keen to follow it up with another Silent Hill PSP title. But William Ortel, Silent Hill's US producer at the time, had a different platform in mind and pushed for his own pet project instead. That was a Wii-based first-person shooter. He then asked the team at Climax Studios to create a pitch for his idea, and that turned into a spin-off Silent Hill title called Bram's PD, in which players played an amnesiac Bram's detective looking for their missing partner in the misty streets of Silent Hill. So, someone forgot who they are and they lost somebody. What would have made this game really unique, though, was that it was going to be an interactive psychological horror game that would use in-game sessions with a police psychiatrist to analyze the players. Based on the responses received, the game would determine your personality type and even change the game's content and end up tailoring unique nightmare worlds. It was an interesting concept, but unfortunately, Konami higher-ups weren't impressed. So, Climax went back to the drawing board and pitched another Wii game they called Silent Hill Cold Heart, which would also feature psychological profiling systems. Players would take control of an emotionally unstable college student named Jessica Chambers, who was struggling with nightmares and insomnia. After speaking to a psychiatrist, she decides to visit her parents to clear her head, but on the way, she gets lost in a blizzard and ends up following an ambulance into the town of Silent Hill. The game would have featured melee combat, puzzles, and a game mechanic in which the dynamic sub-zero environments would require players to find food and clothing to keep Jessica's body temperature up. The game even planned to use Nintendo's Wi-Fi connection to report real-world weather and news for a dramatic effect during gameplay. Producers were interested, and Climax was eager to start production on Cold Heart, but there was still the issue of getting through Konami Corporate's red tape to get the go-ahead. According to Barlow, someone discovered a loophole that expedited the process. At some point before Origins, they greenlit the idea of a Silent Hill remake. The logic was, hey, if we say this Wii project is a Silent Hill remake, it's already been greenlit and we can start working on this project right away. So the project then morphed again into Shattered Memories. Gone was the traumatized Jessica, and in was Harry Mason looking for his missing daughter Cheryl, now in a cold and icy Silent Hill. For the team, the rapper didn't mean too much since they were eager to tackle a highly interactive game using the actions and psychological profile players to tailor a unique experience, which would be still a key feature in the remake. In Shattered Memories, real-life profiling tests like Myers-Briggs Psychometric Questionnaire were adapted, and based on player responses, several elements would change throughout the game. Barlow said that the driving thing was exploring different ways of using interactivity. There's so much data that games take on board about their player. We know where you are, what you're looking at, and how you spent your time looking at things, what you're doing, but 99% of games don't use any of that. By tracking the Wii Remote's movement around the screen, Shattered Memories engines took note on what players spent time looking at and added it to the dataset it was building on the player's personality. Often, Harry himself might even make a comment, sometimes bizarre or amusing, while examining stuff as well. Paired with the responses to the various psychological tests taken throughout the game, this dataset had the effect on what buildings players could access, which characters they would meet, the clothes they would wear, the look of the Rorschachs, which are the name of the creatures in the game, and variations of phone calls and text messages on the in-game phone. Speaking of which, the inclusion of Harry's smartphone was another cool feature never really seen in previous titles. It functioned kind of like the game's information hub. Players could save their game, use the phone's GPS to view a map of the town and even mark waypoints, and the phone would also take the place of the series' iconic radio and emit static when Rorschachs were nearby. Using the phone to dial the various phone numbers found on posters, billboards, and signs throughout town, players could hear various messages for businesses and interact with other characters they meet in the game. The player would also receive texts, photos, and voicemails with conversations from the past that happen within the area they are exploring. The phone's camera could also be used to uncover more secrets and memories in the environments by taking photos of staticky figures. Players also had the option to have the phone calls and static noises come through the actual Wii Remote speaker, and they could place it near their ear to hear the calls as if they were using a real phone. Additionally, the game itself had no load times, which paired with all the interactivity and movements added an extra level of immersion to the gameplay experience. Thanks to the box office success of the 2006 Silent Hill film, Konami US became convinced that there was a new, casual audience for the series, and the Climax team saw this as a chance to engage with a potentially large and untapped audience. Originally, there were plans for combat in the game, but since there was a desire to appeal to more casual players, Barlow was keen to get rid of it altogether. According to him, combat didn't fit the idea of selling horror to such a broad demographic. And in the Edge magazine interview, he cited his own girlfriend's feelings regarding combat in games. She would stop playing a game once she was asked to pick up a weapon and start fighting. It would conform to her idea of what a video game was, and she would become very, very bored. So when producer William Ortel left the project, Barlow and his team took advantage of the confusion at Konami and used the opportunity to turn the game's melee combat into one of pure evasion while a replacement producer was being found. To get things right, the team analyzed chase sequences from various films, took inspiration from common childhood nightmares of running away from an unknown threat, and incorporated an intelligent enemy capable of trailing and outrunning the protagonist. The chase sequences were designed to invoke a brief sense of tension and fright for the player, but they didn't want to prolong the tension with the constant presence of monsters, concerned that this would become overwhelming and spoil the player's immersion in the game and interest in the story. Again, coming back to appealing to a more casual audience. It was pretty radical and quite a departure from what people expected from a Silent Hill title. There was no radio, ice instead of rust, evasion instead of clunky fighting, and an emphasis on profiling the actual players. There were concerns during development that Konami would get cold feet with what Climax was attempting to do with their Silent Hill IP. According to Barlow, the project was still referred to as the remake of Silent Hill 1 on Wii, and they were given the guidance that there shouldn't be anything that would cause people to question it wasn't a straight remake. He said, "It was less than all-out deception, it was just making sure they weren't shown things that would scare people away." The game was originally slated for release on Wii, PSP, and PlayStation 2, but during development, Konami agreed to ditch the PS2 version given the budget constraints, only to resurrect it last minute after it became clear the audience for this type of game on Wii wasn't going to drive enough sales. Towards the end of development in late 2009, the Wii wasn't seen as doing that great, and to make the project make sense financially for Konami, they needed a PS2 SKU so they could tap into the PS2 market in South America, which was booming at the time. Porting the game to PS2 essentially allowed the game to more or less break even. According to Edge magazine, the estimated total units sold across all platforms was about 440,000, certainly below what the team might have been hoping for. Another disappointment for Climax was how Konami decided to market the game as a core gamer title, the exact opposite of what they've been working towards, which Barlow thinks was the main reason it resulted in a similar Metacritic score to that of Silent Hill Origins, scoring a 79 out of 100. According to him, generally the negativity came from people who were opposed to playing a core game on Wii anyway. It was something that could have been negated by selling the game differently. But really, the game was pretty well received overall, especially for a Silent Hill title, with many critics impressed with how good the game looked on Wii and with the reimagined plot, which many noted was much easier to follow than that of the original game. The game earned an Editor's Choice Award from IGN and some Best of End of Year awards from Giant Bomb, earning Best Ending and Best Wii Game. There were mixed feelings, however, when it came to the gameplay and puzzles. While some reviewers liked the nightmare sequences, others were less than impressed, calling them frustrating and repetitive. Matt Casamassina of IGN wrote that the separation between safe exploration and puzzling and run-for-your-life monster scenarios is too transparent, and as a result, you will inevitably come to fear the ice and few things else. And I tend to agree, not being the best at Wii controls, I remember being more frustrated than anything at the maze-like otherworld sequences, but I thought the game's super simplistic puzzles were worse. You need a key, walk around the corner, and you'll find it in an obvious location. There was no real work involved, as real puzzles were few and far between, given the game's emphasis on using different Wii remote movements to open or turn over objects. As for fandom's reaction, it seems like out of all the Western releases, it's generally seen favorably, though there's usually a caveat attached, that it's not really Silent Hill, or they would have liked it better if it was called something else, given how radically different it was from the previous games in the series. I think Barlow was kind of right. If Konami marketed the game less like a core title, and more like the spin-off it really was, I think fans might have been able to temper their expectations a bit. But with that said, I think what really worked against this game was the fervent desire within fandom for a Silent Hill 1 remake, in the vein of our remake, and Shattered Memories was never going to cut it. Even though I like Shattered Memories, I was pretty disappointed to read in that Sam Barlow interview that there were plans greenlit for a real remake, and that this game was forced into one just to expedite getting through some corporate red tape. I think Cold Heart would have been an awesome game to play, and I'm honestly kind of heartbroken that there was a real chance we could have seen the original game with graphical and gameplay improvements. I don't know, what do you guys think? Are you glad they decided to pivot to Silent Hill reimagining and turn our expectations on our heads? I mean, there's no telling if a straight remake would have been well received anyway.
Honestly, your feelings are kind of my feelings. I don't hate that it is a remake, kind of, but I think a full remake would have been way better, and this game might have thrived more if it had been more its own thing, rather than kind of feeling a little bit like it's a mishmash of new ideas, kind of with old figures and faces taped on to kind of be like, hey, look, it's him, it's the guy.
Yep.
Something that kind of bums me out, and this isn't so much that it's a remake or not, it's as you know, there's only one female protagonist in the entire series, and it sounds like there almost was a second one, and they're just like, nah. I think that's probably one of the bummers. I know that in some ways I kind of would have preferred an original story entirely. But yeah.
Yeah, me too.
I understand the criticisms. I think it's a shame we couldn't have had both. I love Shattered Memories. It's easily my favorite Western release game. I would have liked to have seen Cold Heart as well, especially considering that it was clearly taking inspiration from, and not to talk about Resident Evil, but it was clearly taking inspiration from early concepts for Resident Evil 5, which played around with the idea of the extreme heat affecting you.
Oh yeah, Fear and Daylight. What happened to that?
Co-op happened to that. Capcom had to pick one, and they picked co-op, which ended up working out in the end. So
yeah, I always like Shattered Memories. As a reimagining, I think that's what saved it for me as opposed to a straight remake. I've always been in the camp where I'm glad there was never a real remake of the original Silent Hill for a variety of reasons. I think the specter of the RE remake, as potent as that is, I think a lot of the reason Silent Hill works for me is because it was uniquely a PS1 kind of contraption or combination of different elements, and I think as much as I would like to see a fancier, more modern version of the original game, I don't know that it would ever meet my expectations, whether it's taking the cutscene character models and using those as the player characters. It's probably going to be a different team. Even if it was the same team, they'd be different people making another Silent Hill. I think I'm always going to be in the camp of just making something new, like Cold Heart. That would have been cool. Mm-hmm. I'm with October, though. I liked what we got, and it's also easily my favorite Western game. I kind of have a soft spot for Homecoming, but I still really like Shattered Memories.
Yeah, and I should say, and I think I've said this before, there is not a Silent Hill game that I dislike. I like them all, even Book of Memories. I would follow up with you said with a remake. I would welcome a remake just to see what that would be like. I would like the idea of exploring those environments in high def, high fidelity, whatever you want to call it. I do think that a lot of the original game would probably be lost in translation, no matter who was working on it, though, because it's so weirdly specific to that era, in terms of tone and storytelling ideals, and the fact that Team Silent was basically making it up as they went, I think is
tailoring it to the environments, the story to the environments. Yeah,
and with a remake, what do you change and what do you keep? Because so many of those decisions that they made where, initially Konami was like, make a Resident Evil clone, and they were like, no, we're going to do this. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just a clear set of parameters that they followed. They kind of went against the grain and came out with this really unique, I'm going to just go ahead and say it, better than Resident Evil game, at least in my opinion. More psychologically engaging, more than, just underneath the surface kind of horror. To me, a remake always comes with like the new coat of paint deal, where I have this friend who's always talking about, oh, wouldn't it be great if they made, Grand Theft Auto Vice City with modern day graphics? I'm like, not really. I mean, it'd just be a fancier version of it. So I think as interesting as it might be to see Silent Hill in like an RE2 remake style, I don't think it would ever measure up to what I would want from it. It's almost like repainting the Mona Lisa.
I mean, my argument to that would be, is that there's also the chance that you never know, it could be Resident Evil 1 remake, which I would argue is the best Resident Evil game. And it so overshadows the 1996 Resident Evil to the point that other than curiosity, there's no reason to play that game.
It expanded the plot.
It expanded the plot, but of course the difference with that is that it was mostly the same team, including the same director.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, sort of a part of the problem for me is it's such a long shot, and that fantasy ideal of the perfect Silent Hill game has been dogging Silent Hill fans for, I don't know, ever since 3, ever since 4. Like, oh man, would it have been great if they had done the original Silent Hill 5? Maybe. Or maybe it would have been the worst one. Like, we don't know. It's always that ideal. So a remake, to me, it's like, well, yeah, the ideal version of a remake, like RE1, like RE Remake, yeah, that'd be great. But the chances of that actually materializing the way we would want it and actually honoring the game, whether or not it had the same developers or not.
And you know what would be fascinating, and I won't spoil it, although it will probably be pretty easy for some people to figure out what I'm talking about. But I was going to suggest, if you wanted to remake Silent Hill 1, a really cool take on it would be to do what another recent remake did, which was to trick the audience into believing that it is a remake, and then pulling a twist that it is not a remake, it is a sequel. And literally about... Oh, I love it. It's my... I don't want to spoil the game in case anybody here hasn't played it, because it is a incredible twist. Mm-hmm. But
though it did piss off a lot of people.
It did piss off a lot of people.
There's definitely an audience that doesn't approve of that, and
Like,
I don't know. I honestly think it's the minority. It's just a loud minority.
Yeah, I thought their big chance paid off, because that made me more interested.
Yeah, it gives both it gives you both a reason, if you've never played the other games in that franchise, to be interested in the other games in that franchise. Mm-hmm. And as someone that loves that franchise and knows exactly what was happening, that reveal actually made me kind of choke up a bit, because it was so unexpected. Specifically with one character's reveal. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the point that I was going to make is that something like that done with Silent Hill 1, where it's presented as a remake, and then halfway through something happens. But that is technically what Shattered Memories is. It's just Shattered Memories doesn't have the conceit from the outset that it's a remake. It's sold as a reimagining. And other than character names and a handful of events, like Lisa still bleeds out her face, there really isn't a whole lot that binds the two stories together. But that would have been fascinating to see a Silent Hill 1 where halfway through it you discover, oh fuck, it's not a remake, it's some weird in-universe retelling from the perspective of the memories, the shattered memories of Silent Hill 1 seen through the broken prism of Heather's mind.
Yeah, that would be cool. I know that for me, that doing it the other way for Shattered Memories it was the twist, because I wasn't prepared by how far they went with the reimagining part. I thought, okay, well, it's called a reimagining, but they're just going to kind of shake things up a little bit. No, like you said, besides character names, some places, the general kind of starting off point, everything's different. So by the time I got to the end, it kind of is a brand new game. It's only kind of a remake in sort of name only. And by setting it up as a reimagining, I wasn't prepared for how far they went with that, and that was kind of
It's sort of the middle ground between Resident Evil 1 remake and Resident Evil, or no, it's the farthest point, I should say. So like there's Resident Evil 1 remake, which is the original game, but everything's better, it's prettier, there's more story, there's more things to do. The middle ground is Resident Evil 3 remake, where it's technically the same story, but there's less of it and they clearly didn't give as much of a shit. And then there's Silent Hill Shattered Memories, where they kind of use the original idea as a jumping off point to do something completely new with it.
You know, now that you've mentioned the whole game that we shall not name,
yeah.
I almost think that Shattered Memories might have hit me more if I had thought going into it was just straight remake and then it wasn't. I think that reveal would have been really powerful, especially given the actual reveal, which is at the end of the game, that moment really did make me go, oh wow, this is really cool. I think that would have doubled the impact of the ending.
Oh man, I know we're getting into like fan theory shit or like fan fiction, but imagine the reveal like halfway through a remake of Silent Hill 1, like everything's been on point, just beat for beat the original game, but pretty now. Imagine that reveal being handled like Truman seeing his dad in the Truman Show. Mm-hmm. Like just this sudden like, what the fuck? What the fuck does that mean? Kind of like shocking thing for people that know the original game really well.
I think the thing about Shattered Memories is I actually agree that it's the best Western one. I would even probably say it's better than Silent Hill 4. I don't like adore it or anything. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, now I'm distracted. Anyways, the thing about Shattered Memories, I think, at least for me, is in terms of it being a remake. I feel like a lot of like its like premise, like it doesn't need to be a Silent Hill 1 remake. I know that, and like Whitney can probably confirm this, but like, is it ever actually said like, quote unquote, like this game is what if the bad ending from Silent Hill 1 was the canon one?
That's
like,
that's what Tom Hewlett liked to say. He when after the game came out and people were like, what the hell? And he's like, it's a what if, like if the bad ending was real.
Yeah, that's how I've always seen it.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense.
But I think that probably like my thing about Shattered Memories is more, it's not so much that whether it's a good reimagining of Silent Hill 1 or not in terms of the story, but I just think that it's kind of a poor reimagining in the sense that like gameplay wise, it's like just so incredibly predictable to me.
Yeah.
Like I don't like. I like a lot of the things they did, but like the whole like when you're in the quote unquote normal world, you're fine, and when you're in the ice world, you're in danger. Like it never changes that up. Like it could have started out like that, but like halfway through, suddenly the
raw shocks are in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. Like they needed to spice that up because it become the easiest way to kill any horror, doesn't matter what it is predictability. It's the number one thing. Like when you know you're in the real world, you're safe, then what's the point? And I think that's kind of where the game fails for me mostly. It's definitely
that's where
like
it fails for me as well.
Yeah, it's just like it's so predictable, and it makes you wonder why they did it that way. Because
I think the reason is the story, because the whole point was it was Cheryl trying to keep up the her delusion, and if the monsters show up in the real world, it's like what would trigger them? What always triggered them was always reality kind of setting in, like
seeping
in. Yeah.
Like,
so it would have been hard not to.
I think the solution there would have been I think the division is kind of fine because it kind of plays with the other world ideas of the old games, and the chase scenes weren't bad, and thematically they fit well. The problem was having no monsters or danger at all in the normal world just meant that the anxiety that's been building up just goes away completely.
Like, maybe if they did the weather stuff again.
Yeah. You needed to at least have some monsters and some maybe like traps or dangers of some kind in the normal world, because otherwise you're just going to have short, intense bursts of anxiety and then peaceful exploration.
Yeah, and I think again, it comes back to the whole, their audience while making it. They're like, we want people who don't play games to to enjoy this, and they didn't want to scare them off, I guess?
That just doesn't make any sense to me. Silent Hill is not a game that ever really has been known largely outside of gaming circles or appealed to larger circles. Not like, like a Final Fantasy or a Call of Duty. Like, it's not that kind of game.
No.
Yeah, that happens. That happens a lot. Like, I think part of that was just the thing about the Wii, because like something interesting Whitney brought up. I'm really glad you did. Is that at that point the Wii was not selling very well, but because the Wii sold I think like 70 or 80 million consoles, which is a shitload, but it was extremely front loaded. It was all tied to the zeitgeist that was Wii Sports, like 100%, and it's kind of a console that in the past 25 years of gaming, there's no console that has aged worse than the Wii. I'm sorry, Nintendo fans.
I completely agree with you.
The motion control, the premise of that console never grew beyond Wii Sports, and like even the core Nintendo titles never really it never went beyond waggle controls. And even in Shattered Memories, like I hate to I'm not trying to dog on it too much, but like bullshit like doing the front stroke with the Wiimote nunchuck is so bad. Like I think that's probably what Konami's. I totally agree with you, by the way. Like trying to sell Silent Hill as like a mainstream thing is good luck.
Yeah.
But
Question.
I do think that they were.
Sorry,
I do think
ahead.
that they were probably trying to say, or they were probably trying to tap into that existing casual market as hard as they could, and it wasn't smart. But this is Konami Business Division, so yeah, like that. If they wanted to make a Silent Hill game, and I'm not dogging on Nintendo stuff, they probably shouldn't even have put it on the Switch or the Wii U. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have a question
they can put it on the
everyone.
Switch now.
Yeah,
I have a question.
And I
for
wish they
everyone.
would.
Am I the only one here that never played it on the Wii? I played it on the PSP.
Well, you played it without kneecaps, huh?
Yeah.
I played all three versions, but the version I prefer is the Wii because it looks the best.
Oh, one thing I want to say. A big compliment though. This game I still think has the best flashlight in any video game. I love the flashlight, and it actually feels good shining it with the Wiimote. That's like the one thing.
Yeah.
Like I mean that's kind of the problem with the PS2 and PSP versions, is that it's so clearly designed around the Wii remote.
Yeah.
And like I'm sorry, I think that stuff like holding the Wii remote to your head is cute. I like that.
Answering the cell phone.
Yeah, and it's like the one and only time that stupid speaker in the controller
was used for something cool.
Was used for something other than just like Midna laughing or something stupid. Yeah, I like the way motion controls are used in that game, other than the weird, silly
front strokes
and shit. That's a bit much, but the for puzzle solving and stuff I thought was fine. And the PSP and PS2 versions are so clearly retrofitted to the fact that they don't have that. And the worst of all is the flashlight. The flashlight on the Wii feels really intuitive and good, and you're kind of like, this feels like how using a flashlight should always feel in video games.
Yeah.
But on the PS2, you're kind of having to struggle with the right stick. And on PSP, they don't have a right stick, so the flashlight beam is just the size of a car. And it just moves with you as you turn left and right.
Oh, I totally forgot about the wheelchair part where you've got to move.
Yeah.
You joke about that, but that was actually one of my favorite parts of the game. Separate from the actual the physicality of doing that, that's whatever. I mean, you're doing something with it, but that just the whole part where you wake up as Harry in the wheelchair and it's a chase scene. Honestly, I wanted it to go on longer than it did, but I love that part.
Well,
I think the idea
it's
of
not
it.
The part; it's just the motion of the
Yeah,
you gotta do something. I mean, at that point, you're fighting monsters and you're knocking down lockers. I mean, why not? Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, it's no. I think the concept of that sequence is really, really good. And Whitney, you brought up an interesting point about the fact that the other world comes in whenever Harry, aka Cheryl, has to face reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating if you look at them from the angle of that they're panic attacks.
Yeah.
That Cheryl is literally freezing up on the spot in the middle of her therapy session. And that, you know, and if I recall correctly in that wheelchair section, it's Sybil, she says something like, I looked into it, Harry Mason died 10 years ago or something like that. And she...
Wait, I thought that was right before the mole.
Maybe.
Okay, she usually tries to drop some sort of information bomb and gets cut off.
She drops an information bomb.
You swam. You could have died of hypothermia.
My clothes.
You were soaked to the skin. I grabbed what I could find here. We need to talk. When I was at the station, I pulled the file on Harry Mason.
And I remember really clearly whatever she says. I can't remember that. But the thing she says, and there's just this close-up of Harry's face reacting to it. And the whole world freezes over. And as she freezes, the wheelchair slides out of her hands. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's what a panic attack feels like. The sudden, I'm strapped in a wheelchair going downhill and nobody can help me. And it's just, I think that its representation of things like that is really well done. Even though I like the Wii motion stuff, even if it kind of fucks around with moments like that, I can get it and appreciate it for what it's trying to accomplish and what it is accomplishing.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing, just not to back up all the way, but talking about trying to get Silent Hill into a casual audience, I had no idea the series sold so poorly. I was looking at the series only sold like 9,000 units over 15 years.
Yeah,
or 9 million. I mean.
It was never really a money maker.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I knew it wasn't going to be Metal Gear or something like that, but like the last 3 Resident Evils sold 7 million units apiece. That's Jesus.
Yeah.
Shattered Memories, I think, ultimately, not ultimately, but like I think what it was most attractive about it to me than the other Western games is it's kind of like willing to try different things.
Yeah.
It took
risks.
Yeah, it did. It took risks. And because like ultimately the failing of, this is my opinion, but ultimately the failing of the other Western Silent Hill games is they tried so hard to be the Team Silent ones. And especially, you know, I recently wrote about this, but especially trying to be Silent Hill 2 specifically, and I don't get that quite as much with this one, not nearly, because it did try to do something different. Because, you know, after a while, even if say Team Silent kept making these games, after a while, there's only so many times people can be scared by rust, like, you know, fog. Like, you have to do things different once in a while.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the strengths. Not to go on about Resident Evil again, but like that's one of the things I've always admired Resident Evil as a series, as it's always known to reinvent itself kind of at the right time. It doesn't always work, but it's willing to do it. And I think that's kind of like probably the thing I like most about Shattered Memories is, even though it doesn't nail everything, like, you know, the 2 split worlds or the enemies or whatever, it was willing to do things different.
Yeah. And I wish that the series had been more willing to do stuff like that, and kind of turn it almost into like almost like the American Horror Story of video games, because Silent Hill has absolutely no obligation to recurring characters.
Yeah.
Not in the way that its competition does. I mean, like Resident Evil came out with Ethan, and Jesus Christ, people are still angry about that.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. People are angry about Ethan?
Oh my God, yes. People still complain about him.
What's wrong with him?
He's not Chris.
He's a new character.
I don't want to be too mean, but like Resident Evil fans that say Ethan's flat, like, welcome to your whole series, buddy.
I want you to describe Jill Valentine without describing what she looks like or what her job is.
So I wanted to mention something before we get too far away from it. Talking about how Silent Hill needed to experiment more the way Resident Evil did, and that would help it to stay alive or, you know, be fresher. I agree, but I feel like looking at it in retrospect, it feels like the series didn't, but considering like Silent Hill 2 was such a huge difference compared to Silent Hill 1. You know,
oh, for sure.
At the time, it was considered so. It was not taken favorably, and it did badly in Japan. And so they went back to tradition with 3, and then 4 experimented, and it didn't. Like, I feel like they tried to experiment, and they just never were their experience was never really rewarded until retrospect, when it becomes a classic, like 2 did.
Oh, for sure. And I would say. Happened. Oh, absolutely. I would say that in that retrospective sense, the fault lies on the Western games for that, not the Japanese ones.
Yeah,
the Japanese ones did do a lot to experiment, but when we get to the West, we immediately get to Origins, which is basically a remake of Silent Hill 1.
Well, the problem there is, I think, at that point, there was such this weight on, like, every time the eyes on people were just terrible. And I mean, we all know the war stories and everything. Like, it was a bad situation for the series. I don't know how it got this way or why, but it seems almost cursed at this point.
Yeah.
It's kind of a perfect storm. But yeah, when I was talking about, I purely meant like Homecoming and Downpour. And that's where it's just like they're kind of going through the motions.
They did a little experimenting, but I don't think they honestly had enough time. And like Downpour's system of the choices, interesting, and I think it could be really well implemented in a Silent Hill. They just weren't able to do enough with it.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you, is that I think it's a combination of the devs never had enough time. I mean, Homecoming and Downpour are so clearly unfinished. Mm-hmm. And also that there's, I mean, I don't know this for sure, but it really feels like there's some weird like Silent Hill Bible that they all felt obligated to, because that's the thing that made the Team Silent games unique, is that the only one of them that does that what's the bad thing you did was 2. In Silent Hill 3, Heather's like involved in the story, but it isn't Heather, it's her birthright. And with Silent Hill 4, Henry is practically a non-character. I mean, he has literally nothing to do with what's going on. But in the Western games, they kept trying to recapture Silent Hill 2 over and over again.
It became the series' crutch.
Yeah. I think the problem might be the difference between the Japanese team. Even though it changed over the years, there was still probably a feeling of this is ours. Whereas any Western dev is receiving something that wasn't theirs and having to live up to a legacy. And I don't know that any of them really had a successful time with it for various different reasons.
And it probably became very precious to the Western teams as well, both as developers and knowing fans' reactions and trying to please so many different masters. I think one of the biggest reasons I've always cited with problems the Western developers had doing a Silent Hill game was Silent Hill at its core, in its DNA, is a Eastern interpretation of many different kinds of Western horror. Mm-hmm. When you take that and you try to put it in the hands of a Western developer, it's like now you have a Western developer trying to imitate what an Eastern developer's interpretation of a Western horror is, and I think that's where it starts breaking down right at the beginning. But not to get too much ahead, but for me, as much as the Silent Hill series chased that shock ending effect of Silent Hill 2, I think Shattered Memories is the first title where that approach and that effect actually worked for me.
Yeah, and
the ending of Cheryl blew me away, and whatever shortcomings that game has as a whole, I think the ending made up for it for me. I remember I literally I had my jaw dropped. I was shocked, and for me, it's up there with the great surprise shocks of games or movies.
Yeah. It definitely was better than. I mean, it's pretty easy to be better than Homecoming's twist, but it was definitely a lot better than that. But it also didn't rely on Cheryl did a bad thing or anything like that.
I think it earns it within the context of how the whole title brands itself as a reimagining and the shock of the total flip of perspective, as opposed to you're not a soldier or you killed your wife or some kind of little glib thing at the end where you actually start doing the math and you're like, well, no, that doesn't really make sense. I think for once that kind of ending, as much as they probably shouldn't do it anyway, I think Shattered Memories actually earns it this time.
Yeah, and I would say that part of why Shattered Memories works and why Homecoming and Origins... I mean, Origins doesn't work for a multitude of problems, mainly that, we did a whole episode on it, but the two endings posit that your character is two completely different and non-compatible persons. Homecoming is just super weird and it doesn't make sense in the context. I like Downpours a whole lot, but we'll get there. But Shattered Memories has the fascinating conceit of both instead of taking the inspiration from Silent Hill 2 and its twist, it takes inspiration from Born from a Wish, and looking at it from the perspective of the effects that the person has made on the town rather than the person being affected by the town. And even though there's arguably no supernatural element to Shattered Memories, it's Cheryl in the real world struggling with real psychological problems without any weird cult shit going on.
And that's a lot more compelling in a way. I mean, I always like the original game, but in some ways, I think that's another good way that it separates itself from the original as a remake or reimagining or whatever you want to call it. Because from a psychological point of view, that's a lot more compelling. When I got to the end of the game and I sort of digested it and I was like, wow, like nothing supernatural really happened. Like it's almost like a normal story. And because of the way it was done, because of the way it was structured, you don't get that kind of unsatisfying, it was just a dream feeling by the end of it, even though it kind of was. Because, it was a dream, but you've been given every step. And the fact that it's just in her head and all this psychological torture you've actually experienced firsthand it connects you with Cheryl in a way that, like...
You can't with certain other kinds of twists like that.
Right. Well, like, spoiler alert, Jacob's Ladder has a similar ending. I won't tell you what it is. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I recommend it. But as fun as that was, it's still a little empty because that kind of takes away from the experience because you're left with, so all the stuff that character did, it's almost like it doesn't matter. But for whatever reason, the way it's structured in Shattered Memories, since you've gone on, Cheryl, with this journey, how Harry's reacting to the different things, and then how you find out what happened to him at the end, it's a lot more satisfying and compelling psychologically as a result.
Yeah, and I think that being anchored by the routine visits to Dr. Kaufman's office are what help that, is that you're always anchored by reality, quote unquote, rather than it just being a sudden thing at the end of the movie.
And that's a cool little mundane, everybody can relate, whether they've been in counseling or not. Everybody can relate to talking to like a superior, whether it's a principal or a teacher, or in a very kind of mundane setting like that.
Yeah, or even just a trusted friend and having difficulty about opening up. Is like, I don't know about you guys, but even though it's just a video game, you still kind of feel compelled to lie about these personal things it's asking you. It's not like it's connected to the internet. It's not like anybody's going to know what your answers are. But there's still a sense of caginess. At least I felt that way.
Doesn't Kaufman, one of Kaufman's questions are like, how or something like that?
Yeah, he's a therapist, so he's very
asked about your
sex
life, like...
That's all I remember.
Also, sex life.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark. I think the other reason that it works really well is that the core thing that it is not Silent Hill 2. The twist is not what's the bad thing you did. That's so boring and trite at this point. And I'm about to spoil two movies, but considering they're both over a decade old and there's no way to reference them without spoiling them, it's the difference between the big moments in Shutter Island versus Good Will Hunting. I know that sounds weird, but let me finish. The big twist in Shutter Island is, surprise, he murdered his wife. If you couldn't guess that from the trailer, I don't really know what to say to you, but yeah, it's the most obvious twist in the world. It's a well-made movie, but I was just sitting there waiting for it, assuming it would be something more clever than that, and it wasn't, but oh well. But that's the reveal that you expect, especially coming at Silent Hill 2. Coming at Silent Hill from Silent Hill 2, Origins, Homecoming, and now this. You're just sitting there like, what's the bad thing he did? What's happening? What happened in this? Did he kill Cheryl? Did he kill his wife? What happened?
Yeah.
But instead, the ending we get is the big moment of Goodwill Hunting, which is Robin Williams saying, "It's not your fault. It's okay. It's not your fault." That Cheryl is this bystander for something really horrible that deeply affected her, but she was not in any way involved in the thing that affected her. She was just there for it. And I think that's a much more powerful storytelling device than just, yet again, how did we fuck up?
Yeah, the thing about twists is they kind of have to be earned, and I think even when I wrote about this recently, the thing is, like, it's not that Silent Hill can never do like twists again after 2, because, like, the truth be told, Silent Hill 3 has a pretty big twist in it, and
It does.
that's kind of like the conceit of it, but it's not the same kind of thing, and I don't. Shattered Memories is in that vein too, where it's like, it's not a gotcha. Like Homecomings is a gotcha. But in Shattered Memories, it's something that the game leads up to it, and it makes sense, and it's, I don't want to say it's defined by it, but it's not going for the same kind of thing as 2 was.
And there's a huge difference between the emotional resonance that watching the tape in Silent Hill 2 has, and the deep impact it left on, I would argue, the majority of people that have played that game. And then going into Homecoming and having, Locke from Lost explaining to you, you've been in a mental hospital. And then going into Shattered Memories and just, like, the breath catch, at least for me, the breath catching in my throat moment of Kaufman, like, lowering his voice and speaking to you softly, and the door in the background opening and Harry stepping in.
Well, it's also,
just
like, just
this...
after he yells at her and throws his drink, and then he's
Wake up!
Yeah.
What 7-year-old actually knows who their parents are anyway? So she obsesses and obsesses over this fantasy dad propping up her make-believe with scraps of a happy life that never was, scraps of a father who never existed. Wake up!
Your dad wasn't a hero. Wasn't your knight in shining armor. He was a human being.
I really like that moment.
There's a weight to it that you aren't used to from this kind of storytelling. Especially, like, I would argue that this sort of thing might happen in, like, visual novels sometimes, because those don't have much to work with.
Literally happen in the creator's next game.
Yeah. But in a fully voiced, fully interactive video game, I don't know, it's a moment that I find really special. And it's what makes Shattered Memories stand out above the other Western games.
Yeah, especially after what came before, to have such a meaningful, weight to that ending, because you're assuming, like you said, it's just going to be like some sort of generic twist. And I don't know why, I guess maybe it's Silent Hill 2, but I don't know why the developers kind of felt the need to do a twist at all necessarily. But after Origins, after, the stuff that had come before, having that ending have so much weight, I think that also helped it, having kind of weaker entries. And you just kind of assume by this point, they're not going to do anything really risky. And they do. And it's really satisfying.
Actually, I have a question for all of you. What ending did you get first on your first playthrough of Shattered Memories? Mine was the Harry is sleeping around one. What
aren't you horny?
Yep.
I think I got the normal ending.
I think I got the normal too, where Harry's just sort of a normal guy, and Cheryl's able to forgive him. And
what did you get, Whitney? Sorry, I missed it.
I got the normal, but I had a guide. I wanted the best ending first.
Yeah, I played it.
This really was a remake of one for you, Whitney.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew exactly what I was doing too. I just wanted that ending.
So, what did you say, October?
I got the normal ending. That said, I literally didn't know anything about Shattered Memories going in. I didn't have guides or nothing. I found out about it at the last possible second. I didn't know it was coming out. It was like an Amazon ad or something, and I was like, oh shit, there's a new Silent Hill, and I ordered it, and it arrived, and I beat it in like 3 days or something like that, and I didn't know the psychological nothing other than what the game told me, and it actually took me until like deliberately trying to get different endings, like staring at the titties for like 5 minutes. To get any of the other endings.
I was about to say, I don't know what it says about me that I got that one first, but
it's okay.
Actually, some of the questions you get from Kaufman will kind of pigeonhole you into a certain ending. For example, the very first test, if you say a drink helps calm you down, you're most likely going to get drunk dad unless you really, really work at trying to get a different ending. Just that one answer. So it might have been an answer you gave on the first questionnaire or the second,
So, and I like how something like that, where that's not too blatant. It's like if you're over a certain age, you're probably going to answer yes to that question.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem on the outside like a negative kind of response. So yeah, lots of people do. I don't have 7 drinks. I just have, 1 drink to calm down. It's like I take a shower to relax. But that's just subtle enough to where it can bend the story in a way that you're not expecting.
I'd be curious to know what effect the like literal therapy tests have on those endings, because like I've never known things like the are they sleeping or are they dead test. Like, what possible effect could that have? That seems so vague. I love that twist of like, wow, interesting. Well, I'll let you in on a secret.
They're all dead.
It's so great.
Yeah, that I actually really liked that game's interpretation of Kaufman.
I was just going to say that. Yeah,
his acting is really good. The tiger in space.
It's a leap into the void, the great loss of self, the tiger in space, a plea for annihilation. To deny sex is to deny death itself.
I love.
He's very exaggerated in like a fun way.
And they also finally give Kaufman kind of like a real like purpose and role as a character in that one, where he's more of we're talking PS1 stories too, but they're all in the first game, they're all kind of plot devices almost. Like, Dahlia fills the role, Kaufman's kind of the corrupt bureaucrat / doctor. But in this one, he's a real character, and he ties into the story in a very direct way. He's potentially the most important character in the game, besides Cheryl. And the way you connect with him, you keep going back and you develop the relationship with him. It was a really interesting way to approach that character, and I love the way he looks, and
I love the performance, and like, this isn't so much his character, but talking about the dead versus sleeping test, or the one I find really fascinating, and again, I'd love to know what results it ends up conjuring, but the who is most guilty test is so fascinating to me on like a therapeutic level, because there's literally no correct answer to that, and it relies completely on who you are as a person. And I don't know, I feel almost like you could arguably find out something literally about yourself by playing this game. Like, if you've never been to therapy,
it's forcing you to judge somebody in sort of a subjective way. It's not. I mean, it's sort of objective, but you're also being asked to make a very personal choice, personal decision. It's almost like
the personal and grave decision with that.
With consequence
question.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me. There was a study, I want to say it was done in maybe the 60s or 70s, where they had people at like a prison, and they told them, this button delivers an electric shock.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And like normal people with no like violent or psychologically abnormal histories, and basically all of them ended up just like they really thought they were giving electric shocks to prisoners. And they said, do as little or as much as you want. I can't remember the actual specifics, but it was basically, judge these prisoners and see how much shock they need. And then like almost all of them ended up giving so much that it would kill anybody that it was attached to. So they thought they were doing this for real, and they still went overboard, like just normal people. But it's that position of power over another human. And like you said, October, it really kind of shows the person you are in that kind of context.
Well, that's what they were going for with these tests. They, at the very end, you get an actual psych profile, and a lot of times, if it's your first time through, it actually kind of matches up with you as a person, unless you're Kyle.
Well, Kyle, I was going to say, as much as maybe the gameplay, like the night and icy otherworld sections are kind of rote and don't really leave much to the imagination, I would argue that the psychology tests are where it shines in the mixing it up kind of a thing, where it takes risks, and maybe where gameplay falls a little flat, that's where it really spices stuff up. And that's always going to be more engaging anyway, because it's like, okay, yeah, there'd be monsters in the daytime keeping up the tension, but there's no real glue to stick to. It's just sort of a gameplay element. Whereas the psychology tests, that's something that really gets under your skin. You're actually being forced to ask these questions and reevaluate who you are as a person. And that's always going to be more compelling to me than, fighting monsters.
Honestly, and going along with what you said, and maybe this is controversial because, people already bitch about the fact there isn't combat in the game. But I feel that really take the monsters out of the game entirely. Fuck it. Just that keep the other world, but instead of it being monsters, make the other world, and it already does do this, but make the other world be the place where you really confront uncomfortable subject matter. We go through the high school, and there's parts of it that are like, you really want to mess somebody up, send them to high school. There's parts of it that are a little fucky, but then you get into the other world, and it's kind of like, maybe it's kind of bouncing around with like Cheryl was, probably hooking up with a lot of guys, and this,
she hooked up with her teacher.
With her teacher, yeah. It's like that's woo, and do things like that make the other world a place where you're forced to confront really uncomfortable subject matter, especially for a video game.
And she was getting bullied for it too.
Yeah, and she was getting bullied for it.
You only learn that through the I don't know what you call them, but like the phone call, right?
Yeah, the text text messages and
pictures. And at first you were like, "Oh, I'm just taking pictures," but the longer you think about it, you're like, "I'm like blackmailing this girl."
Yep.
Like I'm sending these pictures to people. Like, look at her, she's a whore.
That's something.
Oof.
That's something I actually kind of want to compliment the game on is one of the things that's kind of like horrific about of Silent Hill 2 is like a lot of the details are like understated, and like I feel like Shattered Memories does that too, in the sense that like in Homecoming there's the like, you were in a mental institution, like you're deliberately told, and you're not like, it's not left to the imagination what might be going on. Like at least in Shattered Memories you have to like, you kind of got to dig for it a little,
but it's not so
it's not opaque or anything.
It's not quite Homecoming literally just spelling it out for you.
Yeah.
While also not quite being like, what the fuck does this even mean of Silent Hill 2? Whereas like now, decades later, people are still like trying to figure out what exactly things are supposed to mean, which is great because then we go on Twitter and ask Ito, and his answers are almost always, "Oh, you're overthinking it." And my favorite thing is the nurses, because everyone was like, "Oh wow, that's the nurses are like representation of James's like sexual repression and everything," which is probably true. Then you go to Ito's Twitter account and it's like, oh, maybe Ito was just horny.
Yeah, he really liked.
I think both are true.
Yeah, but I agree. I think both can be true, but I honestly I completely forgot about that. I don't know about the rest of you, but it's been like a decade since I played this game, so some of it's
I haven't played it since it originally came out for the Wii.
I streamed it.
I literally cannot play it right now because I don't own a console with it.
It never got ported to like newer things, did it?
No, you can play it on a Wii U if you want, but that's up for interpretation if you call that new.
No, not quite.
I played it semi-recently, but I sailed the 7 seas.
Oh, you can say it. You played it on the Dolphin emulator. It's all
Yeah,
right.
which is actually quite fun with a mouse. But
I could see.
yeah, I would love this to come back on the Switch. Which, I mean, you never know. Konami just putting out, even though they're apparently super fucked up, but just putting out the Metal Gear Solid ports on GOG. Maybe.
Are they?
From what I understand, people were expecting them to be modern ports. They are not. They are the original PowerPC ports, which means they barely function on Windows 10 and require fan patches.
Jesus Christ.
So yeah. But who knows? I would love to see Shattered Memories come back on the Switch. I think it would be a great fit for that system. And as Nintendo just proved, you don't have to do anything to the game visually to get it to sell a bazillion copies.
Granted, that was Mario.
It was Mario, but Christ.
They didn't even try.
It's just the same exact emulator you can get on a computer. They look exactly the same.
I would love to have them do what I guess it was LucasArts and Double Fine have been doing recently with a lot of their remakes of their old late 80s and early 90s adventure games, where they do special editions. And unlike George Lucas's versions, you have the option to switch on the fly.
Yeah.
And these
like
are
Halo Anniversary.
Yeah, well, they started doing it with their 2D games like Full Throttle and Monkey Island, where they're literally building the code on top of the original one. So when you're doing anything in the game, because it's the same one, you can flip to the modern version. And some of them have voiceover, and some of them have the original voiceover that's just like better, and they have a better graphics. But then they also did it with Grim Fandango, which was originally released in 1998, where that was a fully 3D game, but they still re-rendered it, and you can switch on the fly. So I'm going to be the grumpy old man and say, okay, well, we can do a Silent Hill remake as long as you can include the original or switch on the fly.
No, I completely agree with you. That was like my feelings on RE3 remake are well documented, but the something I think is a real shame is that the newest way to play the original RE1 through 3 is a PlayStation Vita, which nobody owns. And if you do own, don't lie, you haven't touched it in 3 years.
You can play it on. Did you say the most modern?
The most recent? You can play them on PS3 as well, which is what I do. Okay. But it's like, I don't know. Imagine how cool it would have been with the RE2 and 3 remakes if it was you beat the game and you can play the original. It's just it's a bonus feature.
Well, I have a house on 360, which I love, and fuck anybody who doesn't. One of the things you unlock when you beat that game is all the arcade original versions of 1, 2, and 3. That's amazing. Yes. You can't play those games pretty much any other way, even on the TurboGrafx 16. Yeah. Those are not or the Genesis. Those aren't the original versions.
This is so frustrating to me, especially with RE3, because it's just like there's textures bigger than the file size for the original RE3 in this. It's fucking.
Something.
Stop! Give it to us.
Bring it back to Shattered Memories. I actually was curious, Whitney, didn't your website start as a Shattered Memories fan site?
It did. So I created my website to be a site dedicated to Shattered Memories, and then I had so much fun doing that, the lead up to the game, and just sharing my excitement. I expanded it to the entire series, because Downpour was announced, and I was like, oh, I want to keep doing this. So, yes, it did start it as a Shattered Memories.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember a part, I'm not sure if it was in the mall, I think it was later on in the game, where you walk into this room, it's in the ice world, and I want to say it's in that looping area where there's that giant staircase, but you come into a room, and there's like a couch and a table and a TV, kind of like if you walk in, the TV and the couch are kind of on the left side of it.
Yeah.
And I think there's something on the table. And I think, October, you were saying something that reminded me of it in the other world. I had played it, I had beaten it, so I knew pretty much where to go and what to do. I was replaying it at my friend's, and this is the craziest thing that I've ever seen, where he walked into the room, and because the way he was controlling Harry, he was like on a pivot, and he walked in and he was walking straight, looking to the right, and he basically with like looking away, he circled the table where something is that you have to proceed, and he completely missed it. So basically he rotated around the table without ever looking at the table, and he's like, dude, I don't know what to do. And that's one of those moments where you're like, just like turn around and like look at the thing that everyone who's ever played this game looks at. And I don't know if you guys ever had that problem either with this game or any of the other Silent Hill games where you got really stuck for missing something really obvious. Has ever happened to you guys?
That's happened to me when I was streaming this. I got to the pitch black room where you're supposed to use the noise of the phone to get to the next like light to unlock the next area, and I'm just wandering around this pitch black room in Shattered Memories going, I know I have to do something. What did I have to do? I don't
It's
remember.
the worst when you've already beaten the game and you can't remember what to do again to get past it.
And then it finally clicked for me. It was a good, 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, oh shit, the phone's making noise. I gotta follow the noise of the phone. Oh, duh.
Yeah, no, that's definitely... I can't remember that happening with Silent Hill, but I've recently been replaying through Metal Gear Solid 1 just in time for them to announce the remake. I know that game really well. I've played it 100 times. I'd completely forgotten about the PAL key, and I got to the end. I'm towards the end of the game. I don't know if any of you guys know Metal Gear, but there's this key card that you're supposed to change the temperature of. I'd forgotten about it, and I'm sitting there like, what the fuck? And then I started to remember it. I'm like, oh, I gotta make it hot. There's that room full of the lava. I ran back to the room full of the lava, and I'm just standing there. I'm like, come on, change. It's not changing. I'm like, what's happening? And I Google it. It's like, oh, I have to make it cold first, and then I can make it hot. It's fucking stupid.
And they changed that up for Twin Snakes, where I guess they didn't want people.
Yeah, there's vents or something on the wall, isn't there?
Yeah, something like that. I remember October. I know you're a big fan of it, but Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare for PS1.
Yeah.
There's a section later on towards the game where it's one of the fixed camera angle survival horrors where you got to be in a certain spot to trigger the camera change. And there was one, I could not, I spent not hours, but I spent a long time trying to look for something. And I had just not gone to a certain corner of the room to trigger the camera to show me this gate. It was like a big gate, like an exit. And because the previous room was this kind of far away camera angle in this cavernous underground area, I just didn't I didn't notice it, and it killed me because I was stuck on the game for a day or two, and it was just because of a fucking camera angle. So
yeah, that was always the thing that set Resident Evil up. Not to keep saying the name, but that was always the thing that set Resident Evil apart from its competition in that area. Is Capcom had the camera angles down. They always gave you the right amount of information. And there was always a clear... at least in my opinion, there was always a clear difference between I am at the end of how many camera angles are in this room and not being able to see a thing. The camera angles always were about inviting you to explore the room more and not actually deliberately cutting off information, which is a problem that I think New Nightmare has, and it's a problem absolutely that modern, inspired by indie games have. Where they just, all they understand about the camera angles is that there were camera angles, but not how they were planned out and not how deliberately and meticulously they were designed for those old Resident Evils.
Yeah, because you can get caught up in the cinematic, it looks cinematic, this is the coolest angle for this, and totally forget about the fact that it's also a game, and you need to incorporate the visuals into a gameplay experience as well.
Yeah.
So, just circling back to the game itself, the changes in the game. What was one of the changes you kind of noticed? Did you notice your game changing much as you're playing, getting darker or more sexual, with the Rorschachs? Did you guys notice the game changing based on whatever you looked at and answered questions? Or was it all kind of like, oh, that must be how the game looks like? Did you notice a shift, I guess I'm trying to say, a shift? Like from when you started to when you got to the midpoint to the end? Did you ever notice a shift based on your own answers? And
I never noticed the thing with the raw shocks. It wasn't until years later when someone like explained that to me. I'm like, they do kind of change, don't they? Like I don't think that the change in the way they look was crazy enough to register.
Yeah, it was the same way.
I think I wouldn't have noticed if I hadn't had known beforehand. Because again, I went into this game many years later when it had basically been plumbed for secrets, you know?
Yeah, I didn't notice at all.
I think I have some vague recollection of maybe noticing a little bit, but for the most part, because I didn't really have a reference point, and it was my first time playing, it just seemed like this is, how it's going during this first playthrough, rather than it's tailoring it to specific choices I made.
I think they also don't change enough to really notice. Like it's mostly just like their head that changes, right?
Yeah.
And their feet.
Oh, okay.
And like one of them gets like I think it's Drunk Dad. It gets like these pustules like all over the body.
Okay.
Yeah, isn't there one where like I can't remember if it's their chest or their head where it's like hollow, like there's a big donut hole through it.
There's one with the hole. The sleazy ones get like high heels and like boobs. When you played it, I guess, were you eager to replay it to see if you could get something else, or did you just play it the one time and move on?
For me, I replayed it again like almost immediately because I loved it so much, but I still wasn't quite aware of what to do for the other endings, and it wasn't until I deliberately tried to do other things before I realized how much could change. Because I remember, it's like one of the first questions, like, have you ever cheated on a partner? Are you sure? It's like, that I started answering questions like that with like the complete opposite. And, almost immediately things started to change. And I remember getting to Sybil and she's in like the Spirit Halloween version of her Silent Hill 1 costume.
Yes.
And just being like, because you get into that cutscene and it's first person, I remember just being like, whoa!
I can't remember if I actually played it again right away. I know that I played it multiple times, which is actually surprising, because aside from the first three, like, some of them I played once and never touched again, like 4 and Downpour. And, yeah, I did replay it because I was curious to see like how it changes, because I do remember towards the end of my initial playthrough, like every single mall kiosk was just like selling a bunch of bondage gear. And it's like, I wonder how this changes. Like how what happens to like things like the regular world when you're getting like the Harry is a drunk ending? Like what happens? I don't know. I haven't seen it before.
All the mannequins just turn into giant booze bottles.
No, like you'll see a lot more drug paraphernalia like lying around. I think like you know how you pick up cans to find things? A lot of times it would be a soda can, instead there'll be a beer can.
Yeah, that's right.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
See, again, that's something really subtle that unless you're just looking at the can, you might not notice something like that.
Yeah, and some of the shops, like the Green Lion Antiques, like what it sells, I think also changes, and the lighting and stuff. Like,
doesn't the place where you get really super early on in the game, you have the two options. There's like it's like a video store, and the other one is like a clothing shop. Doesn't the clothing shop get like subtly sluttier? Or am I misremembering that?
No, it doesn't, because it's like right in the beginning.
Yeah,
but,
okay.
What changes like there are like the voice messages left on the machines. So, for example, if you went through the camera one, there's a message about a woman's wedding tape getting taped over due to their incompetence or whatever. And either you get like a really angry lady who's slurring her words. Another one is someone being sad that they had to let their dress go, you know, or making comments about how slutty she looked and, you know, stuff like that.
Was there one part where you see Michelle's dress in a store window and then that connects later on?
Yep, it's the red dress you see in the shop.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking of then. That doesn't change, though. That's always her dress.
Yeah.
No, her dress changes.
Right, her dress changes, but it showing up in the shop, it's whatever color the dress is when you meet her, right?
I think so.
No, it's always that red color.
Oh, it is? She never has a different dress?
No, Michelle gets a different dress, but the dress in the shop doesn't change.
Oh, okay.
At least I don't think it does.
Talking about the voicemail messages, that's something that we haven't really talked about is the telephone mechanic, which I always thought was really super fun. Like it really doesn't add a whole lot to the story objectively, but I thought it was just a really cute mechanic that, like, if you see a phone number, give it a ring.
That's like, true. It actually works.
And it actually works. It's a lot of fun. Like, you can call the boat shop on the dock. If you can call Konami, and they'll tell you that you're straight fucked.
Thank you for calling Konami customer support. How may I assist you today? Hello? Hello? Our caller ID shows that you're calling from Silent Hill. I regret to inform you that you are beyond even our help.
I thought it was a really cute little mechanic, and I also love being able to set your ringtone to a little like the Nokia version of the Silent Hill 1 theme. Which I thought was very cute. It's a neat mechanic, and like other games have tried to do that, but I haven't ever felt like they were as, I hesitate to use the word realistic, but as I don't know, like diegetic as it is in Shattered Memories, because like you have the phone in like GTA 5, but the phone in that is like literally a central mechanic of getting around the town. Whereas in Shattered Memories, the fact that you can call all these numbers it's just a thing you can do because you have a phone.
And I think when did this game come out again, Whitney? 2010?
2009 and 2010.
God, I'm old. Okay, so this was kind of before I really started playing games on console with headphones. And I'm guessing there's a way to do it on Wii. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but
have the phone calls just come through the TV? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So usually when I play games, I'll have a headset, but with the Wii, I wanted to do the speaker, and I wasn't using a headset for the Wii, so all the texts, even the vibration of the phone, certain things that, you know, vibrations from the monsters would all come through the Wiimote. I know, October, you already said that you held the Wiimote up to your ears when you got a phone call. I did the same thing, and I thought it was so cool. And you feel a little silly doing it, but I'm like, no, I'm in the game.
Yeah,
this is cool.
I think it's cool, and it sounds nice. I mean, that's the thing, is that I always felt that the audio on that controller sounded a bit shit.
It did.
But oh boy, did it. But when used for that, like, I don't know how long it's been since you guys used like a telephone, but it sounds like shit, especially compared to like this. I don't know. It's like the Xbox One voice chat sounds better than a telephone, but I thought it sounded, I don't know, it sounded really good through that speaker. I thought it worked.
It plays to the strength of the speaker. You know, it's supposed to be a little janky, and that's how it sounds.
Especially when it's like fucking up, and it's like that first call with Cheryl, and it's like,
Cheryl?
Daddy? Daddy?
Sweetie, you're okay? Are you at home? Sweetie, wait there. Wait for me.
You have to run, Daddy. You can't fight them. Run!
What? Is somebody with you? Cheryl! I'm coming to get you! Damn it!
like fritzing out and all staticky and shit. I think
And
it's
that's a
super
great
cool.
callback to the original game because
Mhm.
it's almost like you get your cake and eat it too. You have the whole phone thing, but it's in a completely different context that works for this story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
actually
great.
set on my phone at the time. I set the ringtone to be that Silent Hill 1 ringtone, and the text message to be that like doon doon sound it makes in Shattered Memories.
You know something I wanted to ask. I remember way back in the day, Whitney. I remember you used to make the argument that it's the same game without the cult.
Yeah, it is.
Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, it's basically the journey he makes is exactly the same as the original game. It's just doesn't have the cult elements. He meets Dahlia, same place, a Balkan, but it's a nightclub instead of a church. Where he goes basically from the car crash to searching the town a little bit. He goes to the school. He goes to a hospital. He goes to the Green Line Antiques. It's a pawn shop. The town center is now a mall. I mean, he goes to all the places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think that I know this is a particularly divisive bit, but do you think that the characters are good proximities or takes on the existing characters?
The whole thing was to kind of turn the story on its head and surprise us. So we're expecting characters to act a certain way because we've played the first game. But now, like, Dahlia is not the crazy one, and she's young and beautiful. So it kind of...
And she's his wife.
...plays with your expectations as a fan. So I felt it was a neat little idea to play our expectations against us, because you're like, whoa.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean,
And in that context, it worked for me because by being a reimagining as opposed to a remake, it purposely divorced itself from any direct comparisons or expectations. Even going in with the idea that, yeah, Dolly is crazy or Lisa's a certain way, I was always pleasantly surprised when they differed from what I was expecting, because that's kind of what was the point.
I kind of miss Dahlia going gyromancy.
Yeah. I mean, I still prefer Silent Hill 1, obviously, but I did like that they tried this experiment of playing with their expectations. I think if more fans knew going in it wasn't going to be like a remake just with snow instead of fire and rust and stuff, I think less people would have been disappointed. But
It totally needs to happen too, because like the Dahlia from Silent Hill 1 doesn't work at all in Shattered Memories' story. Like, here's this crazy cult lady, and I'm like, okay.
But they kept the most important thing. She's Cheryl's mom.
Yeah, exactly. That's
they
the
just
important
made
thing.
her now married to Harry.
Yeah.
Instead, and Harry's still a writer too in the game. It's just what he writes will change. Like, he's a romance author, or I forgot what the other ones were.
Now, I totally forget this about Shattered Memories, but is Cheryl like his like biological daughter in that one?
She's
Yeah. Okay.
biological.
Yeah. Okay. So that's probably one of the big differences. Because like I wasn't on for the Silent Hill 1 episode, but like something I feel gets forgotten about with Silent Hill 1, which is really frustrating, from like larger talks about the series from outside and how, you know, Silent Hill 2 is this masterpiece, et cetera, is like forgetting all the cult stuff in Silent Hill 1. I kind of think that game is about like why family is thicker than blood. Like, I kind of think that's what the story is about. Like, because, you know, like Harry does all this for for someone who's not technically his daughter, or not, you know, not related by blood. And I always think that's an extremely powerful message and an important one. And one of the why it's the reason why, like, fuck, like, shitlords like Kratos, Harry's the best game dad.
Oh, definitely. I agree with you there.
Fuck,
he saw blood and guts on the floor and kept going into that alley.
You know what?
And he's not
like
even like no fighting skills, barely can use a gun. Yeah,
trips over steps.
Look at it. Look, he killed a god with his Glock, and then he picked up this girl that he didn't even know. It could have been a demon. He didn't know, but he's like, you know what? You're my baby, Heather. well, Cheryl, whatever. And he took her. And I think that's one thing I maybe really miss from Shattered Memories is like that theme. I guess it would be really hard to try and do.
Choosing your family. I mean, it's more than just blood. You know. I mean,
that's
Dahlia was her blood, and she tortured her daughter.
I was just going to say Harry's relationship with Cheryl is a great contrast to Dolly's relationship with Alessa.
He might have been your father, boy, but he wasn't your daddy.
But like, you know, yeah, exactly. That was it. Like, that's the whole like crux of that story too. Because like, it also doesn't do the whole thing like where it's like, well, the woman in your life or the mother figure has to be pure, and like what they did in the fucking movie where it's like, you know, Harry Mason, we looked at him and he's a woman because he cares about his child. It's like, no,
men don't care about children.
God, and also like the movie adaptation, the director basically says he made the main character a woman because only women feel that way. Like, what?
Exactly. Yeah, and what's even worse is like the whole thesis of the movie is God is parent is God in the eyes of the child.
Mother is God in the eyes of a child.
That's like the direct opposite of the video game it's adapting. But sorry to go on that tangent, but that is definitely like that's what I love the most about Silent Hill 1, and why I don't think it's quite fair to that game that like everyone obviously I think Silent Hill 2 is a masterpiece, etc., but I do think that that first one has some very like it deals with some heavy themes, and like, you know, it might have this garnish of cults and all of this, but like at the end of the day, like, you know, Harry cared about his adopted daughter, and Cheryl's biological, like Alessa's biological mother was a monster, and like I feel like that kind of stuff, like I wish I could have seen more of that kind of thing in Shattered Memories.
I think in Shattered Memories, for me, what ticks that box is she's his daughter. And for that story, for that game, that's as much as it needed to be to get that connection. So Harry, Cheryl, they have the same relationship whether or not they're related by blood in both games. And I think, for me at least, just by having her as the daughter, fulfilled that kind of story function.
Mm-hmm. It's a very different story too, so it doesn't quite work the same.
I mean, you could put that in, but to me, in Shattered Memories, it would almost like dilute and kind of confuse the story that they're trying to tell. Like, oh, she's adopted too. Like, well, what does that mean? It's like, well, that's the least important detail in this story.
Oh my god, I just realized something. Wow, I'm an idiot. Wait, are the like rewind and the scan lines in like the menus, is that supposed to be Cheryl watching old home videos?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
watching The Last Day with Your Daddy over and over again.
I literally never realized that until just now. Oh my god, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, that's actually that opening, especially after finishing the game, is one of my favorite parts of it.
I love my daddy.
I love my daddy.
And I know that's kind of become a meme, but I love that. I mean, we kind of make fun of it, but
it's a different time. It was a different thing.
Yeah.
I still love it. Now, I don't know. I guess I'm one of those people that I can see the ironic side of it, but I can see the genuine. I respond to the genuine side of it. I think with a lot of things, any kind of meme, Lord of the Rings, the prequels, people are responding to something genuine that they see, and the fact that they like to kind of make light of certain things is almost an homage. Like, we're making fun of it, but it's something we care about, and that's why we're making fun of it. For some people, at least.
Yeah.
It's I think when I'm looking at Shattered Memories as a whole, it's just like I just think that even for its faults, it does enough right that I think it more than justifies its existence or place in this series. And maybe like I do kind of like wish we had gotten Cold Heart. I mean, it could have been bad. I'm not saying it would have been better, but like I think it does.
I wish we could have gotten both.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, if there is a new Silent Hill game, for the love of God, don't make the protagonist a white guy again.
Get ready for a white guy protagonist, baby.
Oh yeah, it's definitely.
Well, if you're gonna make him a white guy, make him an interesting white guy.
By the way, just one last point on the thing. I don't know if it's even possible to link it. You don't have to. But when I started doing art for Twitter, one of the very first things I did was a piece of Shattered Memories art. And fucking nobody understood it. everyone was like, "Wow, what's this like weird blurry thing?"
It's been so honestly, it's been so long.
Can
since
you
I
link
played
to it? I
Shattered
don't remember
Memories.
seeing this.
It's in the chat.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think I would have gotten that.
That's a cool piece of art.
Yes.
Oh,
The
I
closer
got it.
look, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept having people be like, "Is it like a little TV on the what's happening?" It's like,
Is it the Joker? I don't.
I think, something, looking back on it and looking at all the lessons that a potential new game could take from everything that happened to the series in the past, 10 to 12 years is like the ice is like really memorable to me. And like, you know what? Silent Hill can do stuff more than fucking Rust. Like, do something else. Make it, I don't know, like
Well, they
sand,
made it.
whatever.
They made it rain and downpour, ice and shattered memories, and then
Horror in the daylight to fulfill that, because no one's really. I mean, there have been certain things. Like Town of Light, for me, I didn't play the whole thing, but that was really creepy and it was bright daylight for some of the sections. But yeah, the ice thing, the first time the ice world takes over coming out of the high school, I think that's the first time. After that harrowing chase with the Rorschachs, that really blew me away because like you're getting chased and you're coming up to that bridge and all of a sudden everything, coming out of it. So it's the ice world, it's the normal world coming back. And you get to that bridge and everything like within 2 seconds is right back to normal. And it's just this shock and you're like, what just, it goes so quick your senses don't have time to keep up. I really love that part.
That game is an absolute technical showpiece for the Wii. It's definitely one of the best looking Wii games.
Oh, for sure.
It's the Silent Hill 3 of the Wii.
So something we didn't touch upon, you also kind of get the relation. You see glimpses of how Cheryl also sees her mother too. So during the game, you see her as young and sexy, but when you get to the apartment building, their apartment, you meet Dahlia, and she's older and she's chubbier, and her hair is like chopped off. But the thing is, when you get the good ending and then the little extra bit, you see her mother give Cheryl a hug in the parking lot, and she's slim, a nice like chick haircut, nothing at all what we saw during the game. So I like how this game kind of hinted that she had a troubled relationship with her mother as well as a result of her father dying after their divorce. Because, if they didn't split up, he wouldn't have left in the car and gotten into the car accident from the ice.
And everything is skewed from Cheryl's perspective, too. So it's like the unreliable narrator syndrome where...
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, everything... Again, Shattered Memories is the perfect title for this. Even if you're not familiar with the first game, because Shattered Memories is referencing both people who have played the first game and are playing this, or Cheryl's literal shattered memories where she's trying to piece all these fragments together and you are experiencing them as if they actually happened. And it's only towards the end where you realize these are just recollections. It's like that fucked up thing of you don't actually remember what happened. You're remembering the last time you remembered it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that because like the endings are... God, I can't believe I didn't realize it. Are they endings like she's like viewing like the truth or whatever?
Yeah, you see the true clip.
Yeah. So I guess that
and it has that same. You see the true clip, as in like the rest of the video, and it ends up having that same thing as like Isaac in Dead Space 1. Is that he kept watching the video of Nicole.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't finish it, and it's the same thing with Cheryl. Is that she could keep, if she just kept rewinding it over and over again, that meant that she didn't have to relive the end of that tape.
And it's the obvious implication being that it was that way all the time.
Yes.
They live in Silent Hill in that one too, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was going to mention that earlier.
Regular real last town.
Yeah, but you assume, Harry must be there on vacation or something, but then he starts finding the house and wait, Cheryl goes to the school too, but he has no memory of it. So again, they're playing with your expectations for what the story should be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now there are some even darker themes depending on the variations you get. One of the ones that I thought was really dark was during the exploration of the woods, and you find the echo photo of with the sleeping bag. It's not a photo, but you have to point your flashlight and stuff, and you'll get like a text message. And this one, you get a photo of basically this teenage girl. It might be Cheryl. I think it's Cheryl. Like getting hazed in the woods, and some of the pictures you get are pretty creepy looking. Like one variation, hell, I told them not to go too far, but they wanted to mess around with the new girl. No one was supposed to get hurt. I'm burning the trash. No one will know we're here. And what we thought it'd be fun to spike the new girl's drink. Didn't know it'd end up like this. Thought she was still swimming, but she wasn't moving. Like they killed somebody in the woods.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. It's like, Jesus Christ.
That's good stuff.
Or the kids who got stuck in the sewer.
Help! It's my brother. We're playing in the pump station, but the water's come up, and he's trapped. His hands are cold. His head's under the water.
The one they were playing, and the one boy drowned, and then the other boy felt so guilty, he went into the woods and froze to death. It's like,
and I love those little snippets. It kind of reminds me in a way of, Silent Hill or Twin Peaks, where you get lots of little vignettes. They're like, they're super condensed, real specific, and they're real fucked up, but you get them kind of sprinkled throughout. So it's not just the trauma of Cheryl and or Harry. You also get these kind of remnants. And, in the first game, it's kind of like, well, there's this presence in Silent Hill that maybe has affected these things. In Shattered Memories, it's kind of more like the world's a fucked up place, and here's these random examples of it. And it just kind of adds to the overall kind of depressive nature of this specific story, because it's not just Cheryl's story. There's all these other fucked up things happening.
Yeah, and the fact that, again, none of it is supernatural adds to it. Is that in Silent Hill 1, there's there's White Claudia and stuff like that, but a lot of the games end up just coming in, especially when we get to the West, all of it comes back to the cult. Just like constant paintings and stories and everything. But Shattered Memories just has this, you're exploring the town, you're the only one here, you're breaking into the school and breaking into lockers and all sorts of stuff. You're going to find things.
Right.
And the real world is not a great place.
Right. And I like that it's not just a generic black or white kind of thing. There are shades of gray in this as well. And I think the cult angle, the original game or even the Western ones, those are presented more theatrically. So you could argue those work better as opposed to this, where, like you said earlier, Whitney, if you awkwardly added the cult in this, it just wouldn't work in the way that this story was presented.
It would feel silly.
Well, you'd have to do it a different way. I think you could still probably have the cult, but you'd really have to back it down and almost be more like a group of people that, like a secret society, as opposed to a straight up sacrificial cult or something.
Yeah, or make it like you find a flyer or something, make them some weird, like the Raincoat Cult from Dead Rising or something. It's some weird underground thing, and maybe the mayor's part of it or something.
Or they could have done the complete opposite and just have it be like a punk band in the neighborhood,
yeah, absolutely, go for it.
The Order featuring White Claudia,
Yeah, featuring White Claudia, and the lead singer is Maria. But yeah, it's. I think it was the tag. It's a stupid fucking tagline, but I think it's the tagline for the very first Silent Hill that every town has its secrets. Some are just darker than others.
Yep,
and I feel that is the theme of exploring Silent Hill in this game.
Right.
It's just everywhere you look, there's some dark, sad some of it is fucked up in a deliberate, this person was a bad person kind of way. Others are the whole thing with the kids, there's a term for it, but I don't remember it. The kids doing the autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yeah.
And it's that's a thing that's real. That's a thing that people it's dumb as shit, but people do that, and a lot of the time die.
I think that's one of the most effective things to put in any kind of horror, be it video games, movies, or books.
Yeah,
real things that are horrifying about everyday life.
And I love the way it's presented too. Is I'm pretty sure you read the school notice about it before actually finding evidence of it.
You see a little poster
because
warning about the choking game.
Yeah, and you're reading it and you're like, oh, what the fuck? It seems so like after school special, and then you actually find the memory of someone choking
Doing it.
themselves to death, and it's like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
and someone being really upset that they lost a brother or a friend.
Yeah.
Another one that I felt was kind of chilling was when you went through the sex club, and one with it's an echo. It's one of the photos, and you see a woman like holding her head, and she has pigtails in her head.
Oh God, yeah. Did he look like her daughter? Oh,
yeah,
or
and
his
the guy
daughter?
like slapped her, or he was pissed off because she looked old enough to be his wife. He wasn't a schoolgirl. He was mad at himself because she looked like his daughter. Let's go back upstairs.
Sorry, I hit you. I guess I was just mad at myself. You look so much like my daughter. Just put the wig back on and let's go upstairs.
And then you get to the school, and there's another one with a blue car, and it's a dad dropping off his high school age girl, and he's going off about her pigtails and how cute she is, and how, the boys must really like
God.
you, or why did you change your hair? I liked the pigtails. And it's like, oh my God, is it the same guy?
You got all your books? Your lunch? Good. How come you changed your hair? The other girls tell you to do your hair like that? I thought you looked great with pigtails. Okay, honey. You have a nice day.
Yeah.
Does he want to have sex with his daughter?
That's more Twin Peaks shit right there.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable and but really well done and really and the fact, and honestly, that like nobody in this town escapes it too. There isn't any one shining beacon of light that you find out about. Is like you meet Lisa, and it's like she seems like a really nice, sweet person. She seems like a pill popper, and she's like kind of forward with this guy, and that's not like slut shaming. She's just kind of forward with this guy she just met, and it's just big things, little things, average things. This is the real life.
And I think that what really speaks to how subtly that kind of stuff is done is Shattered Memories was rated M. And I think it used that rating wisely. It didn't overindulge it or use the rating irresponsibly. I think the dialogue is smart. The characters feel natural and respond realistically. And I think a lot of that isn't, blood and guts or curse words language. It's those fucked up stories like the sleeping bag thing, like the pigtails story, like I don't know if you could get away with that in a teen game. Maybe you could. The point is, it's not M-rated because of blood and violence. It's M-rated because it's horrific in a real, relatable way.
Yeah, it's like the difference between like, an adult movie and a movie for adults.
Exactly.
Like Saw is R-rated. That movie's aimed at 17-year-olds. I would argue it's aimed at 12-year-olds. But like, and like most M-rated video games, and maybe most is too broad, but
you can say most.
Yeah, most M-rated games just use it as like blood, gore, swearing, and titties.
Yeah, it's surface level mature.
Yeah, which is fine. Love me all them things, but with Shattered Memories, the most gore I can remember is that like hunting lodge when you find the like gutted deer.
Yeah, there's also
and Lisa's death.
And Lisa's
no.
death.
There's also another one that you could get a variation where right before the world turns to ice for the woods, it can look like a serial killer shack. There's like photos of people on the wall. It's so fast. I caught it on my stream, but there's like this Polaroid photos hanging on the wall. And
oh shit! I don't think I've ever seen that.
There's like on the door or right outside, you find that bloody jacket and wallet and stuff where you get a key to open it up. Yeah. And inside there's like a puddle of blood. And as soon as you walk in, the shadow Cheryl runs out, so it immediately turns to ice. But in that split second, it's like, holy shit, it's a killer, it's a serial killer shack. What the fuck?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's sort of what I mean. Is just that there is blood and stuff in it. There is swearing, from what I remember. Obviously, tons and tons and tons of talk about like sexual stuff, but it feels like it's using the M rating to tell a story aimed at adults. That like I guess if you're like 13 and your mom at the mall lets you, you can probably you can play it if you want, but it will probably be boring. Is the thing is it would be boring to somebody that wasn't an adult.
This isn't Dead Space.
There's no
Where's my gun?
There's no explicit violent imagery or sexual imagery or anything
Yeah,
like that.
it's context and subject matter, not literal material.
Which is definitely welcome after Homecoming, where Judge Holloway got a drill shoved in her mouth.
I'm the only one who likes that scene.
I love it. It's so
He deserved
it's so,
that.
like
It's a satisfying kill.
It is.
But it is very ridiculous and kind of.
It's very.
Yeah.
It's such a byproduct of its era, though. Like that's when Hostel and Saw was huge, and it's just anyways.
Yeah.
I would say
and
that
it's very heavily influenced by the movie, which also had some of like skin ripping ridiculousness.
That movie is so much more graphic than any of the games.
Oh,
yeah.
You could argue being that graphic in the games could work as well. I mean, I think it's really how it's presented and what your intentions are with that. Like if that's all you're doing with the Silent Hill game, then no. But if it's within the context of a deep psychological story, then yeah, I mean, Silent Hill 3 was incredibly bloody, but you didn't see a lot of the violence. It was like the aftermath or the background.
It was it's kind of like when it comes to like violence and the effectiveness of it, like I don't want to say that it's more mature or anything like that, but like just kind of as an example, like a movie that I think is like very like psychological and like deeply disturbing, and I don't think it's like, I don't want to say it's, what's the word I'm looking for? John Carpenter's The Thing. It's very gross, very disgusting, and it uses a lot of violence, but it also doesn't it doesn't feel cheap. Like there's a lot of video games, especially, that it's like what we've been talking about, where it's very cheap. There's countless examples.
And The Thing is a great example of that. It is very, very. I mean, I would argue it's one of the, but not in a cheap way, like you're saying. Like Saw is just like, oh, it's a lady's arm that got ripped off. Ew. Whereas The Thing, I mean, John Carpenter is a fucking master filmmaker, so it uses the gross out in a way where it's more frightening because it otherwise. And no, I don't. This is going to sound really backhanded because I love the genre. The Thing presents itself as a real movie, quote unquote, that then becomes a gross out horror movie in bursts.
The irony is that critics at the time thought the reverse. They thought the way we're talking about Homecoming is it's just a gross out fest. It's got the surface story, and they just wrote it off at the time as just this bloody gore fest. When in reality, it's I can see people being overpowered by that. But it serves a function, but it's also way more than just that gore. I think the thing that it chose to do was, as opposed to like the 30s and 40s horror movies where you kind of keep the monster in the darkness, they were like, no, put it out there in the front.
Put it on the front, but still, like, it's like you very rarely get a clear look at the thing.
Hold it to me in 20 years if I say something good about Homecoming. That's all I'll say. Because that won't happen. But no, I think Shattered Memories is definitely, it's interesting. I never even thought about the rating. I thought it was rated teen. I guess not.
No, that's why, because you're expecting it to be super full of gore and whatever, but it's not. So you're left with the subject material, the subject matter. It's cool shit.
Yeah,
I like it. 10 out of 10.
Also, I think it's kind of fucked up that Harry would kill the family dog and then try to replace it like Cheryl will not notice. It's a different fucking dog.
We hit something.
Oh, shit.
What is it?
It's...
Oh, shit.
What do I tell her? I'm looking for a dog. Here, Oh, you're looking for that dog?
No.
Or,
not this dog. One that looks the same.
exactly the same?
Right.
You're in luck.
Yeah, you can do that with like gerbils, Harry, but not
Fish.
Yeah.
I've heard of that done with fish, but not with a dog.
Not with a whole ass dog.
I don't know. Sure.
No, it's
well. In hindsight, though, in fairness, Cheryl tried to replace the dad after that too, and it didn't work.
That is true.
We could get you a new Harry. That's your subconscious. Oh gosh.
Well, Alessa gives Harry a new Cheryl at the end of Silent Hill 1.
A replacement baby. Here you go.
It's all about replacing.
We got a spare.
Yeah. It's like poetry as they rhyme.
Oh god.
I really liked all the little Easter eggs they hid throughout the game as nods to other Silent Hill games, like Cheryl getting arrested in Portland, a nod to Silent Hill 3, and Harry.
Yeah.
The movie posters, when you called the phone to hear about the movie, the background music would be like tracks from...
Welcome to Cinephone. Take a listen to the forthcoming features in your area. Dearest Mother. She was the perfect mother, in search of the perfect opportunity to shine.
You've been the best mom. Now it's your turn to live your life.
This heartwarming tale will lift the spirits of families everywhere, with a story of love and strength in the face of adversity. Rated PG-13.
Silent Hill Origins, the phone numbers to different locations, like Lakeside, Lakeview Hotel.
Lakeview Hotel is closed for the season. Isolated in the lush surroundings of the Toluca lakefront, the Lakeview is Silent Hill's premier luxury hotel. Years of service have established the Lakeview as the choice for the important occasions in life. Visit soon and make the Lakeview your special place.
Just places we hear about, but, we don't actually visit.
And of course, Mr. Sunderland's appearance for
his
the
UFO ending. Yeah.
James? Wrong day again? See you tomorrow, James. One of my couples therapy patients. Haven't seen his wife in a while.
Oh, remember how fans were mad because Tom voiced him?
Yeah.
He
had one little line, and he just...
Well, it's pretty good for a non-actor.
Oh no, he did great, and I'll never forget that. One of my couple's therapy patients. Haven't seen his wife for a while though.
It's really cute.
Leave Tom Gilbert alone.
I also really love it's one of, because there's the one end credits theme is I can't remember. The time flows, nobody knows.
You can't remember the title? Sorry,
I can't remember the title. Yeah,
I know the song you're talking about.
That whole soundtrack devastated me. I mean, that and Homecoming that have some of the most like melancholy tracks.
Oh yeah,
and that one that you're referencing, like, God, just thinking about that now makes me depressed. But in that,
is it Hell Frozen Rain?
Kind of way.
No. Hell Frozen Rain is the other one song I'm talking about. It's what starts to play when Harry enters the room.
Yeah.
In the therapy session. It's just it's so somber. But Hell Frozen Rain, I was going to mention, I like because the only piece of music that sounds like it's from Silent Hill in that game. I mean, obviously the whole game's Akira, but it has a very different feel and sound to it than anything else he ever wrote in the series. And I've heard people say that, like, oh, he was clearly like kind of running out of ideas or getting burned out. I'm like, I think it's intentional. I think it's intentionally different and less.
I still think it holds up.
I think that's something we should talk about. Actually, you finish. Sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just going to say is that's the one thing is that we get the one classic sounding Silent Hill song, which is Hell Frozen Rain, which I really like, and I actually had it as my alarm for a really long time.
Didn't the soundtrack CD come as a pre-order for the Wii version?
It did, yeah.
But I love how that song is like the one real true tie to the rest of the series, and I like that because it quotes the Silent Hill 1 theme. The crescendo of there's a technical term for it, but I don't remember what it is. It goes in the na 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 na.
Yeah.
And I think it feels great. It feels like it ties it all together in this, like I said, like ensemble series that this is not bound by the characters or the lore. This is using Silent Hill as a concept to explore greater ideas.
We should totally talk about, though, this was Akira Yamaoka's last Silent Hill game.
Yeah,
He composed. I know he appeared in another one, but this was the last one he composed. And admittedly, I am kind of one of the people that felt like he was kind of drying out a little, but it's still really good. The especially like the vocal tracks were probably one of the better ones. But he did it. He did a great job.
Mute yourself.
Yeah, it was kind of getting me distracted. Sorry. But yeah, this was the last one he worked on, and what did everyone feel about that at the time? And do you think that it was a good point for? What was your just your general thoughts on him leaving at the time?
Well, we didn't actually know he was
understandable
leaving.
because
we didn't find out until Downpour, and they announced that it was going to be.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I made a
I
mistake.
think everyone kind of recoiled from.
Well, I understand why.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only so long you can do the same thing and not be bored to tears.
Well, because people were already complaining about the series being derivative, not the music. I guess they started to by Shattered Memories, but I remember when I found out, it's always like that kind of, oh, that sucks. But he probably wants to do other things, and the games aren't what they were, so it's understandable.
He had left the company. He left Konami, but like. I know that Shattered Memories is a lot of people's favorites. Is that up there? Is it up there with the rest of you?
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
It's my favorite after 4,
or even sorry, I'm just trying to get like general thoughts on like Akira's last Silent Hill.
Oh, are you talking about just the soundtrack or the game itself?
No, the soundtrack.
I
thought it fit the look and feel of the game. I was sad that, I don't know, there wasn't as many scare noises, but it makes sense because it's more based in reality than being in a hellscape looking for somebody.
Yeah, you also don't you're constantly moving forward in that game. You're not like returning to an area or anything like that.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. I think for me, it's kind of tied with Homecoming, but when I think about the Silent Hill Shattered Memories soundtrack, I think of those two vocals, and those are two really good tracks, and so it's kind of hard to gauge where I would put it in my overall list, but I really enjoyed the soundtrack overall.
I think for me, my feelings about the game are generally positive. The problem is that I've literally only been able to play it once about 8 years ago. And unlike all the other Silent Hills, which I still own and I have the consoles associated, like I've been able to really dig into them, I haven't had the chance with this one because I don't own a Wii. And I sold my PSP in college. So this one being so much harder, even in terms of Silent Hill games, to get is really frustrating because I do think it's one of the better ones.
Yeah, especially in Silent Hill, that's saying a lot. It's not very accessible. Like I think honestly, the best way to play it these days would be the Dolphin emulator. That's really and that's there's really no option. You can't even buy it anymore. I don't think.
No.
Well, I've learned that the PS2 copy of Shattered Memories goes for a lot of money.
It's like a collector's item, right?
Yeah, everybody's like, why is this so expensive? And it's always the PS2 copy.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got the PS2.
Cheap either.
I'm looking on eBay right now. I'm seeing one for $24 for Wii, $30 for Wii.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it right now. PS2 Shattered Memories, $500.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
why?
Open box. They're going for $250, $300. But
this is such a collector's thing. Like here's this bad version of this game. That's
the cheapest thing would probably be to get a used Wii and buy a copy off of eBay.
I would argue it might be more beneficial because you can actually plug it into an HDMI port and you get access to every Wii game and Wii U game. like Fatal Frame 5, a game nobody remembers came out.
Yeah,
I still haven't played 4.
Well, none of us have.
So, Rourke, you actually cut off for me. Could you repeat that
Which
about
recommendation?
recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
We couldn't hear. You said. Go ahead.
Oh, I recommend over getting a used Wii, get a used Wii U. You won't be able to play GameCube games, but that's what we sail the high seas for. On Wii U, you can plug it right into an HDMI without having to fuck around with component cables, and you can play any Wii game and any Wii U game. And the Wii U has a pretty good library of things that Nintendo hasn't bothered to port yet.
How would the flashlight work in Shattered Memories on the Wii U?
With a Wii remote.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You can just hook up a Wii remote with it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I just have the image in my head. Y'all been talking about the fact that in the Wii U you can put the mode to your head and hear it like a cell phone or what have you. I just imagine doing that with that Wii.
Or a Switch, you're in the car.
What? That controller that was like a Fisher Price like drawing like utensil.
The Wii U has a special place in my heart. As much as it is definitely the awkward Frankenstein before the Switch, I took my Wii U to work when I worked at the horrible mattress firm, and I hid it under my desk, and I played Zelda all day for hours. And back then, how else would you, like, the Switch didn't exist. How else would you have done that? That thing
it was great.
Gave me so much joy.
I did the same thing. I worked at a tuxedo joint, and I was the lone employee 99% of the time. Brought it back there, played Batman Arkham City. It was great.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah. It's the most like backwards ass way of having a Switch experience, but the Switch didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
Did either of you guys play Zombie U for the Wii U?
I did. It is okay.
Yeah, it got ported to what, the PS3 later on, or
it got ported to everything later on. I think now the only thing it isn't on is actually the Switch.
Yeah, I remember liking it. I just didn't get very far in it.
It's fine. It's clearly designed for the Wii U to make use of the tablet and stuff. So now ported to other systems, it's a little weird because some of the mechanics end up being lopsided because of the lack of a second screen.
Yeah, that always sucks when that happens.
But we do have the great thing to thank it for, which is one of the very first trailers for Zombie U has a very young Steve Harrington from Stranger Things in it, which is really fucking funny to see.
Was there anything else you guys wanted to touch upon? Or
maybe just like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say I think we covered a lot of the stuff. I mean, besides maybe the new character they added, Michelle, and her boyfriend. But
I literally don't remember.
I liked
who
her.
that is.
I loved her solo on the screen. The Hispanic girl that you meet that has the red.
Oh yeah. Okay, right. Sorry, I haven't played this in like 10 years.
Are we doing final thoughts, Whitney, or are we?
Yeah, unless Kyle, you had something else you wanted to.
Oh no, my final thoughts on Shattered Memories are just kind of what I've been saying this whole time. Is like it was an interesting idea. It doesn't stick the landing in every regard, but I'm glad it exists. And if that Silent Hill game that may or may not be real actually comes out, I hope it looks at something like Shattered Memories and says like, we don't necessarily need Rust to be Silent Hill. We can do something else. There are different aesthetics. There are different like things that can graft onto the side of like a fence or pipes besides Rust.
Yeah.
And
we didn't talk as much about the snow aspect. I thought it was really lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, the technical achievement they had with the snow is pretty mind-boggling.
And just the feeling of isolation that you have a lone town in the original game, so it's got that spooky no one's there quality. But there's nothing like, even in the real world, where it snows and it completely changes the environment, and that feeling of isolation you get, especially either walking down a street in Shattered Memories or in the forest. You really feel isolated. And that's a completely different kind of anxiety and horror that this game used. And I love all the Rust, or ice being analogous to Rust in this one. ice freezes everything. It's in place. It's immovable, like Cheryl's memory. So it has that visual aesthetic going for it. But yeah, I loved that as a change, and I love that how they used it and how it worked in this story.
Yeah, it's also appropriate since there was falling snow in the original game.
Yep.
Yeah, rather than ash. I was going to say, we talked about it a little bit before we started actually recording, but I had the unique experience. I ordered the game from Amazon. I'm sure I've said this in an earlier podcast, but I'll repeat it again because it's the podcast for this game. This came out when I was 19, to make the older members of the cast here feel even older. No, I was 18 because it was 2019. Or 2009, I mean. It arrived in the middle of the snowpocalypse, if anyone remembers that.
Yeah.
And
thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama. And it was my first real snow. I grew up in California. I grew up in Los Angeles, where it barely even rains. And it had snowed a little bit when I lived in New Jersey for a year or two, but this was my first, snow. And going out there to trudge to the mailbox in the middle of the snowpocalypse to get my game out. And it was so cold that when I got indoors and opened the box, the back of the disc, fogged over as I took it out of the box.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, this is perfect. And I'm in my room and it's fucking freezing. And I'm playing Shattered Memories, and I literally can barely see out my window for the snow. And it was so perfect.
You were really immersed.
Yeah, you were playing
it was maximum immersion. Take that, PSVR.
And that's early December of 2009, so that's straight up in the heart of winter.
Hell yeah.
Well, actually, no, it came out late December. I actually got it early when I ordered from GameStop. Yeah, I got it. It was supposed to come out the following week. I got it on a Friday. So I basically had the game for a weekend. And I think everybody who ordered from GameStop got their Wii copy early. Actually, that was the only one that was out. And I basically beat it in a weekend, and I had it for New Year and stuff like that. I remember.
One last note about the music we were talking about and about the sense of stress and isolation. My absolute favorite track from this game, and I love walking at night in the rain, in the snow, whatever. But especially when it's snowing, I put on the score for Shattered Memories. And the track Creeping Distress is the sound of walking at night in the snow to me. It's that piece that goes da 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 da.
Yeah.
It plays right when you're first exploring on your own.
Yeah, I'd say that's when you first explore the town.
When you discover that the A button is the Cheryl button.
Cheryl!
Sweetie?
Cheryl!
Jason?
Sweetie? Jason!
Let's reach for that.
Yeah, for me, Shattered Memories takes chances which pay off, and the overall effect of it makes for a very worthy and worthwhile effort from the development team. I think Climax knew that they couldn't reinvent the wheel, but I think they succeeded in changing our concept of the route that it takes. For me, it raised the bar on what we could expect from Silent Hill games in mostly good ways.
Yeah, AJ, did you have any?
I think my thoughts have mostly been said or been kind of mentioned by everybody else. I thought it was a really lovely experiment that I wish was more readily accessible and that I would like to return to. I think it was maybe not my favorite, but definitely one of the better ones, especially for the West.
I gotta say, after Homecoming, I really felt like Shattered Memories, even though it stumbled, like what I said with the puzzles and the chase sequences, I thought got kind of annoying because I was bad at Wii controls. I thought the series was stepping in the right direction. Like, I felt like, okay, they're doing their own thing. They've realized that they could do their own thing with Silent Hill. They're experimenting, and I had high hopes, for the next game. I liked how it kind of turned my views on the series, because Homecoming was such a disappointment for me. So I'll always be grateful for Shattered Memories for making me excited again, inspiring me to start a website. I mean, I wouldn't even have a podcast right now if, Shattered Memories didn't come out. It didn't seem
you all
like...
hear that? the queen of Silent Hill attributes everything to Shattered Memories.
Is that ironic? Shattered Memories, that's the one that we're talking about all these years later?
Yeah.
All her memories.
I mean, I did have a collection site, but I was always nervous about doing a Silent Hill site because it just seemed like, I don't know, such an undertaking. Like, people were already, there were so many sites out by that point, like Silent Hill Heaven, Silent Memories. I mean, they're still around, but there was all these other little sites to each game. And I saw that no one was doing anything for Shattered Memories. So I'm like, hey, here's my in! Right here! You know, I'll do a shrine site to Shattered Memories. Hell yeah! It got me to take a chance on doing a site.
Really cool too, because like
Yeah.
you were at like the premiere for one of the movies and everything because of that, and you know,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I got to meet a lot of cool people. You know, I met you all of you guys thanks to, you know, making the site and making content and podcasts and stuff. I was able to connect with all you guys, so I'm always grateful.
Yeah, no, we're very grateful to
And I met
Shattered Memories.
Tom because of this too, because he reached out to me via email to help me fill out sections of my site because there wasn't a cast list. I just had guesses, and he was like, "Yeah, you're right about this person who played this person." Yeah,
Nice.
I just thought
That's
it was
really cool.
so sweet of
Yeah,
him to reach out via email and be like, "Hey, you know, I really like your site. I'm so glad you enjoyed the game. You know, here's some."
From my few brief interactions with him, he seems like such a chill dude.
He's really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool game, and it definitely. I know we've already kind of gone over this, but it would be nice if there was some way, some official way to revisit it that doesn't involve eBay or downloading software.
Yeah. You hear us, Konami? We want to give you money.
Please
In
let us give you
2020,
money.
there's still people that want to give you money. So do it.
Put the games out on PC.
Or anything.
I want it on Switch now that I've imagined that in my head.
That makes
I want
sense
that.
too, because you could totally
Yeah,
use
you
like
get
the
the
motion
gyros.
controls.
Yeah. They
with
work
all the
great.
Sega collections, with all these collections that come out every single year, like a Sonic collection, Mario collection, as good as those are, you can't, like, they're just getting some Metal Gear back out. You can't just give us a collection with all these games. Like, you have them, just release them.
Well,
Let's release them.
Unless they don't have them,
well,
which is possible.
Yeah.
they have tried doing Silent Hill collections in the past, and well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
anyways,
just do them well this time. I think Shattered Memories in particular deserves a lot more respect than I think it gets, and I think a lot of that is because it's over 10 years old now, and I think when people look at it, they think of people who don't know what the game's about. Maybe they do think it's just a straight remake or the one with the ice that I didn't play, you know. So I think it deserves better recognition and more respect.
I wish everybody liked it as much as we did. I know a lot of people were very disappointed, and it just makes me sad.
it's definitely my favorite. It's definitely my favorite of the Western ones, and probably my favorite since 3. There, like again, final thought is I think that there's a level of polish and execution and vision in that game that I think that Homecoming, Origins, and Downpour just do not have.
Yeah.
It has something it's trying to say, I think, and that's and as much as I love Downpour, it's down, and we'll do Downpour next, obviously, so I won't dwell on
Yes,
it.
that's coming next. Downpour.
Yeah. Downpour has a thing it wants to do, and I think it executes it. But the thing Downpour is doing is much more in line with like a TV show level of interesting thing that it's doing, whereas Shattered Memories feels like it lives up to the promise set out by something like Silent Hill 2, rather than being Silent Hill 2, but this time, again, it's following up on the loftier ideas that game was introducing to the general public of video game players,
and without feeling like too reverential or precious about it. It's not derivative, and it's not too reverential to the past series. They're really trying to do their own thing, and as much as Homecoming and Downpour kind of try to do their own thing, it's still within that mold of like, let's make it a Team Silent version of this, as opposed to just doing doing a new game.
Yeah.
Which is what all of these needed. They need to, to quote Mitch Hedberg, you see, turkey salami, turkey bologna. Man, turkey, just be yourself. Silent Hill games, just be yourself. Don't try to be the other Silent Hill game. Do your own thing and people will love you.
Yeah. Well,
boy, that killed the room dead.
Okay, well, so that was Shattered Memories. Next up would be Downpour. Do you guys have anything you'd wish to plug? It doesn't have to be Silent Hill related.
Well, I have a YouTube channel that is at least tangentially Silent Hill related, though there's other stuff on there. And I also write books about Silent Hill, and the book on Silent Hill 3 is coming out in October.
Woo! Yay, get your pre-orders in.
Yeah, it's on my website. You can go to thegamingmuse.net, and there's links to the store and the YouTube and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have, if you want to get the normal ending, I have a Twitter account at Sissel the Cat. That's Sissel spelled Sissle because I can't spell. And there I do art commissions. I've become quite popular for doing spooky Resident Evil artwork. So come check me out. But if you want to get the Sleaze and Sirens ending, I also just started at Sissel the Spicy. Come check me out over there, where I also do commissions of a different nature. Also, RelyOnHorror.com, where you get daily horror game news, reviews, previews, and more.
And I have the Screaming Wave Productions YouTube channel. Not a ton of stuff on there, but you can always check out my 2-hour-plus interview with Silent Hill 1 actor Michael Gwynn, who voiced Harry Mason. I also have an Instagram page and a DeviantArt page if you want to check out my art, and I also do commissions.
And I'm a freelancer in the games industry. Some of the places I've written for are IGN, Fanbyte, VG247. I recently had a story go up on Fanbyte about someone named Peter that was a Final Fantasy player that passed away. Another thing I did recently for Bloody Disgusting was actually a Silent Hill story about how not even a story, it was a crit piece about how the series needs to move past 2 if it wants to return, because honestly, no matter who's working on it, I just do not want another game where we have a videotape wannabe scene, just personally. And I also, actually, this just happened this week. I got a job at thegamer.com doing news.
Oh, nice.
And,
congrats.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, congrats.
The site is kind of exploding in the past year, so things are working out. But besides that, you can follow me at Twitter. It's at Levito. That's at LEVIT0, where I'm probably tweeting either about Final Fantasy XIV or Twin Peaks. It's very little else.
Oh, actually, if I can be permitted to plug one last thing.
Yeah,
my third Twitter account is at Amygdala Comic. It is a survival horror inspired comic series. There's a new page every Monday and Thursday. It's about 2 girls in the late 90s who are thrust into the midst of some sort of horrifying incident. The comic hasn't quite gotten to the point where I explain it yet, but currently they're struggling to escape their high school gymnasium, which has become filled with freaks wielding knives and wearing skin sacks stapled to their faces. So go check that out.
That sounds like gym class.
It's very true. If you really want to mess someone up, send them to high school.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, go ahead and check that out if that seems like your kind of thing. It's spooky and gory, and it's made with a real love for all of the sorts of things that we've been talking about today.
And of course, I'll add links to everything in the news post for this podcast. As for me, nothing much going on. I am playing Dead by Daylight with the Silent Hill content, so if you guys ever want to play with me, feel free to add me. It's Kemi_Row, which is the same as my Twitter handle. I'm working my way up to a better level. I'm having a lot of fun. But yeah, that's it. So thanks again, everybody, for coming on the show, sharing your memories, thoughts, and thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys stay safe and come back soon for Downpour.
Wear your masks to date the episode horribly. Unless, of course...
Wolfiel wears his mask, you should wear his mask.
Absolutely. The
Or a
Butcher
mask.
wears a mask. Pyramid Head
wears a mask.
Hell yeah. The biggest, safest mask.
Ever.
Pyramid Head
It's so
exists.
safe because you cannot breathe through it.
I mean,
Michael Myers is safer than you if you don't wear a mask. Come on.
I mean, like, you have to admit that, like, it's quite ironic that Pyramid Head, the masked person who is supposed to remind James of the bad things he's doing, that life is imitating art, so don't be a Guy Seehee, be a
God.
Head.
Don't be Guy Seehee and don't be, what's his name? The guy that plays Dante that recently came out.
Ruben Langdon.
Langdon.
Yeah.
It turns out Virgil was the good brother all along.
Who knew?
Fun.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Stay safe.
Okay.
Kiss your mother for me.
Voices in the Static, the podcast of the Soundhill fan site, soundhillhistoricalsociety.com, was recorded and edited by me, Whitney Chavis. I want to give a big thanks to all my guests and you guys for listening. It's been a blast gushing about this series to you all over the years.